Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Every day spring brought new surprises, but these unexpected gifts pleased and filled the heart with some kind of anticipation of happiness. Sophia, too, felt a pleasant excitement, a warmth crumbling inside, sliding the curtains open. She opened the window and soaked in the spring scents. The air rushed into the spaciousness of the kitchen. The woman put her face up to that same ceiling and whispered, "God, it felt good." It's not for nothing they say that spring awakens the desire to live. Sophia squared his shoulders. Romance, a useful thing, but not for me. And all because for me life has long ago acquired the format of duty. The woman put the kettle on the stove and headed for the refrigerator. Footsteps sounded in the hallway, and she froze for a second from surprise. Then she said very loudly to Greg, "You almost gave your mother a heart attack. You could have sounded the alarm." I'd forgotten I had tenants. Greg's face was still wandering. Shadows flashed in their dreams, and so he smiled stupidly. "Okay, Mom, I'm going to buy a doobie of the Children's World today. And every morning before leaving the room I will remind you that you are not alone in this apartment." The young man said the last phrase like an orator completing his morning speech with vivid facial expressions and gestures. Sophia shook her head disapprovingly. "Stop clowning around. You'll be 35 soon, and you're acting like a boy. You need to settle down." "Mom, it's a trait that almost all men have. I'm talking about a tendency to do childish things. But you women don't understand that such inappropriate behavior hides courage, willingness to sacrifice, and Sophia laughed. "I get it. Your oratorical skills are good, but your vocabulary is suffering. Let's wake up your half. We'll have breakfast. Kettle's almost ready. I just have to make the sandwiches." At that moment, the kettle sounded, and the woman rushed to the stove. She didn't see her son's face contorted in a grimace of confusion. There was a long pause, and the mother turned around. "Are we fighting again?" Greg waved his arms vigorously. "No, Mommy. Molly and I are doing just fine. It's just that my wife had a little accident, and you came in late, so I didn't bother you." Sophia carefully put the kettle on for comfort. "What kind of trouble are you talking about?" Greg nervously chuckled, which was clearly not in keeping with the nature of the message. "Molly had a sudden stomachache last night. Yes, so badly that she had to call an ambulance." The woman's face turned pale, and she sank to the edge of the stylish sofa that threatened the kitchen decor. "Tell me it's something serious. She didn't happen to be in a physician." Greg, I didn't expect such a reaction, and got really worried. "Mom, it's all right. We also at first thought that something female something, but this version immediately dropped out. So you can relax. There's nothing wrong with your sister-in-law. It's a simple appendix. She even had surgery." The mention of surgery only made Sophia's condition worse. She was panting and tears came to her eyes. "Did you call a hospital? Is it that serious?" "Mom, don't worry, don't worry. The danger is over. I was up early this morning, checking on my lovely wife's health. She was operated on at 300 hours, so don't blame me for being callous." I'm sweating with excitement. "You interrogated me like I was on trial. Mothers-in-law don't usually worry about their daughters-in-law." Greg exhaled with a sense of accomplishment and headed for the fridge. "So we have that to stress over." The mother beat her son to the table. "Sit down at the table. I'll do the cooking. I have to clean up after every time you go to the fridge." Greg didn't argue and sat down at the table. "Mom, I have such a vicious appetite, probably from nerves. I was really scared when Molly got sick. I'd never been in a situation like that before." Sophia gave her son a fleeting glance. "It was a situation like that. Greg, you just forgot." Greg felt himself being burned from the inside out. His mother's words sounded reproachful, a reminder of a long-standing family tragedy. To enter now into a bickering stand that without exaggeration depended on his future. His well-being he didn't want. So the best thing an adult son could do in the situation was to switch to another topic. Greg had often used this method in his childhood, and he was eager to use it now as well. "Mammy, I've been meaning to ask you for a long time, but I haven't had the chance. Maybe you could move in with us. It's hard to run a serious business away from civilization, and not quite convenient. We have a spacious apartment for 2 people with a lot of square meters. Soon the renovation will be finished, and it will be even cozier. So think about my proposal." Sophia figured out her son's maneuvers, but she also did not want to spoil her mood in the morning. She only noticed as a victim. "You think you're going to get your mother by turning the tables? It's not gonna work. I can guess your plans by your breath." The woman quickly cleared the dishes off the table. "I've been talking about moving for a long time. I'm quite comfortable in Castle Pines, and in modern conditions you can do business from anywhere in the world, even from the North Pole." Greg passed by, not forgetting to imprint a kiss on his mother's cheek. Already from the hallway, he shouted cheerfully, "Mom Molly in the second surgery in Ward 6. If you go, she'll bring slippers and a robe, and I'll drop by in the evening. Greg should probably bring something to eat." Greg reappeared in the cramped space of the anteroom as a humorist. The tenants themselves called the space between the hallway and the kitchen. "Mom, what are you doing? You can't eat at all after abdominal surgery. I think you can drink. You can't eat. All right, I'm off." After all, the son of the head of the company should be a role model. Sophia, as if remembering something important, made an expressive gesture. "Greg, hang on. This news about Molly's illness has completely knocked me off my game, and I forgot to warn you that from today, we will buy all consumables and fittings through a tender." "Okay, Mom. I ordered my lazy men to prepare the documents and inform the partners about the changes." The head of the company interrupted her son. "No, you take care of your direct duties, and this case I entrusted to someone else. Kevin has a wealth of experience and has a special nose for shoddy products." Greg was caught off guard because he didn't expect his mother to be so set up. An angry grimace contorted his face. "I get it. You don't have to explain. But you're counting my ego. You don't tell me that." In a burst of not-so-good feelings, the man kicked his indoor slippers, and they flew into the living room. Sophia came close to him and looked into his eyes. But it was no longer the warm gaze of a loving mother, but the cold gaze of a successful businesswoman. "You need to temper your ardor. Be thankful that I noticed the case with the past deliveries, which almost cost us our reputation." Greg instantly shrank back, and his shoulders slumped. His mother's authoritative voice as a child had suppressed his desire to resist. He couldn't forgive himself for this weakness, but he couldn't overcome it either. Sophia understood her son's state of mind. "I don't know, Greg, what prompted you to contact this dubious supplier, which is Cleopatra's firm. But I have no right to take risks. We're talking about dozens of people who work for a company that employs people with disabilities. We have a number of benefits, and I cannot allow myself or anyone else to cheat these people, to deprive them of their present and future. That's why I've made this decision. But you shouldn't take offense at me. It's best to learn from Kevin. He knows how to find an approach to even the most uncooperative partners." "Greg, Mom's boiling. Your Kevin's the biggest crook in the world, isn't he? There's no place to brand him." Sophia grinned. "Such people are called enterprising. They are very useful in business, and I strongly advise you to get Kevin's good attitude." "Mom, you're the one who just half an hour ago reminded me of my adulthood. I'm sorry, but I don't want to take lessons from your Kevin. What if he's such a great employee? It's time we put a bronze bust of him in front of our office in gold and right." The woman laughed. "Stop clowning around. I repeat, do not take offense at me. I'm doing this for your own good." Greg said nothing, but thought with irritation that his mother was again trying to create a harmonious duet. She had never spoken of him as an individual, and it was this fact that had once served to form a pile of complexes that still interfered with his life. The counterbalance used to be the half-sister, but now Molly has taken the place of the mother's favorite. The sprouts of his mother's jealousy of her own wife began to sprout in Greg's heart. Not long ago, the man realized that it would lead to nothing good, but he hadn't been able to suppress that stupid feeling yet. If Sophia had been told 5 years ago that the appearance of a provincial girl in her house would completely change her own life, she would not have believed in such statements, but further forced her mother-in-law to look at past events and current problems in a new way. The most positive moment for the mother was that the daughter-in-law taught her son to treat life with care. After all, Greg's bachelorhood had exceeded all permissible limits, and his mother often reproached him. "Greg, can't you find a nice girl? All you do is look and talk. That's how you get to gray hairs." My son was amused by such conversations, and he provoked his mother on purpose. "Mom, this image suits me fine. No obligations, you're only responsible for yourself. Life's a rush, but it's not normal. A grown man shouldn't be like a creature who is not responsible for anything." "Mom, that's your personal opinion. I have a different view, and I think it's the greatest folly for a man to voluntarily put a stigma around his neck. If you think like that, you'll be alone in your old age. Mom, you're my role model. You're single too, but I don't see any signs that you're suffering. Don't compare me to yourself. Besides, I've been married twice, as my grandmother used to say." Oh, by the way, my grandmother. Too bad you didn't get to see her. She knew all kinds of customs. She told me that in the old days they used to hang a heavy deck around their necks on Shrovetide. Greg was natively impressed by this custom. Medieval savagery. Everyone had their own opinion, but still this conversation influenced Greg, and he soon met a girl with whom he started a strong relationship. For almost 2 years, Greg and Cindy lived in a common-law marriage. Sophia hid from acquaintances that her son was cohabiting, but the young couple was not the least bit embarrassed. On the contrary, they liked free relations, and on occasion they tried to emphasize the advantages of such a union. Cindy said about it approximately as the world is changing, and a person must also fight with outdated stereotypes. Personally, I treat marriage as an unnecessary formality, although Sophia did not agree with this attitude. She tried not to interfere in the relations of the young. Cindy was from a good family, and at first she even made a positive impression on Greg's mother. But once during a frank conversation with the future mother-in-law, the girl revealed her essence, saying that the husband is a man who is obliged to fulfill any whim of his woman. Sophia was horrified by Cindy. What about love? After all, it is impossible to create something lasting without this feeling. The girl looked at her boyfriend's mother and calmly replied, "Love, carrots, and other tenderness. It's all utopia. No one needs a vestige. I told you that relations between people in modern society are now built on other principles, no matter how much the woman asked." Cindy couldn't name those principles. Sophia hoped in her heart that a union based on these incomprehensible norms would not last long. Her premonition was justified. One day, Greg came to her early in the morning and after a short greeting asked, "You won't mind if I stay with you for a week, will you?" Not a muscle in his mother's face quivered, although she guessed the reason for the sudden visit. The woman said very calmly that she might not have asked. "This is your home, and you can come here at any time of the day or night." The son hugged his mother in a burst of sincere feelings. How nice it is to have a person who understands everything without any unnecessary words. Sophia did not go into her son's soul and waited for him to tell her the reason for his separation from Cindy. "Mom, you won't believe it, but I've thought of you so often. I wanted to give it up so badly before, but I did. I don't know why I had to make such sacrifices. You can't build anything without patience, son. And for family life, that ability is essential. So why did you two split up?" "Mom, it's simple. In backyard parlance, I was elementary. Every day, she had a new dream. And for some reason, it was me who was chosen to fulfill those wishes. For a long time, I tried to convince myself that this was a temporary phenomenon. But then I realized that in the view of Laika, any man is a walking ATM or faker, able to make money out of thin air." Sophia's reasoning seemed sensible. She was even glad that her son decided to part with Cindy. The woman continued to believe that Greg would meet a girl with whom he could build a strong family. But after the separation from Cindy, the young man began to lead a dissolute life. He rented an apartment in the regional center, in which almost every day arranged noisy parties. The mother heard rumors about what the son does in his spare time, but she understood perfectly well that it was useless to reprimand a grown man. Only once she couldn't stand it and said with undisguised regret, "Greg, of course you're free to dispose of your life as you wish, but remember that one day there will come a moment when you will be, as a famous writer said, painfully hurt for the aimlessly lived days." Greg grinned wryly. "Mom, did you hit the mark? I've been feeling that way for a long time." "Then I don't understand why you don't try to change things." The young man sighed heavily. "It's easier to go with the flow, and I'm used to it." His son's frank confession shocked his mother, but she realized that she could not change his mind. The woman thought for a long time about how she could help Greg, and one day on a hunch, she went to the local temple. Sophia did not know any prayers and turned to the Mother of God with the words that were bursting from her heart. "The Queen of Heaven will intercede. Help my son. Nastasia him on the right path. I appeal to you as a loving mother worried about her child. Do not refuse your mercy." Sophia whispered the words of the prayer. Tears rolled from her eyes. An unfamiliar old woman watched her for a while, and then came closer. "Pray, my dear. Sincere words will be heard and will not go unanswered." The woman looked at the old woman, who reminded her of her long-dead grandmother. "Thank you." She leisurely walked from the church. She heart developed, pleasant grace, inner voice encouraging, and whispered, "Sophie, everything will be fine." And again she remembered her grandmother, who always used that form of her name. The woman considered it a sign from above, because the grandmother was a very religious person. The next day, Sophia again prayed in the temple in front of the images of yesterday's old woman and did not meet her again. Surprisingly, but visits to the place of spiritual solace became regular, and every time after prayer the woman did not forget to leave some money for the needs of the temple. Perhaps her appeal was heard in heaven, or was it a coincidence? But Greg's life changed abruptly. One day he arrived at Castle Pines unannounced, along with a petite blonde. In a solemn voice he announced, "Mother, receiving guests. This is Molly through the walls." My fiancé Greg all glowed, and the mother realized that her son at this minute very happy. Molly looked at him with admiration, but was silent the whole time. Sophia was charmed by this lovely girl from the first minute. She began to fuss around her guest, trying to anticipate her every wish. "Molly, come in, make yourself at home." "Greg, what are you standing there for?" Greg was pleased that her mother was making such a big fuss over the girl. He expected a slightly different reception, and was very surprised by the warmth and even tenderness that flowed from his always strict mother. Having got a convenient moment, the young man whispered, "Mom, you do not recognize you today. You are on a roll." Sophia threw a reproachful look at her son. "How do you think I should behave to pounce on the girl with questions?" "No, Mom, keep it that way. I can see that my Molly is in shock. She's not used to this kind of attention." The guests really felt awkward the first night and acted very stiff. At every question she blushed and lowered her eyes. So Sophia decided not to embarrass the girl and to postpone the clarification of biographical data to a more favorable time. After dinner, the son approached his mother and whispered in her ear, "Mom, if you can make a bed even in Kelly's room." The woman looked at her son with surprise. "Aren't you from your mom?" Molly was brought up in the old traditions, so to speak. She wants to take things step by step in our relationship. So you decided to play along. "No, Mom, it's not a game. It's more about not insulting someone I care about. Molly is an amazing creature. She's ethereal. I confess that it gives me great pleasure just to be near her, to look into her bottomless Greg eyes. I think you've fallen in love for real." A mother's heart sing with happiness. "Sophia, I really wanted this shy girl, who didn't have a single gram of makeup on her face, to really feel comfortable in their apartment. She herself walked her into a room that had been empty for almost 10 years. Settle them further and feel free to contact me if there are any difficulties. Suddenly, the girl snuggled up to her for a moment. Are you two so alike? The girl said it with such sadness that Sophia realized that there had been a tragedy in the family of her son's naming just recently. She was afraid of hurting the girl and did not question her, but even herself spoke briefly about a personal misfortune. Mom died last year. She was never sick. Even colds avoided her. And then she felt so bad she couldn't get out of bed. My sister and I thought she had an infection, so we called the doctor and he said it was very bad. I guess the fresh wound hadn't healed yet, and Molly's voice trembled. Sophia hugged her. If it hurts, try not to remember. The girl burst into tears on the chest of her future mother-in-law. I try not to think, but I can't. Mom is always in front of my eyes. Everything happened so fast. In just 2 months, the disease ate her up. It's been over a year now, and we still can't get over it. And Dad still can't believe Mom's gone. They loved each other very much. He says that for him life without Mom is meaningless now. Sophia sat the girl down on the bed and sat next to her. I too suffered a terrible blow many years ago. My youngest daughter was missing. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, even childishly. Yes, Greg told me about the accident, but not in detail. He and I have an unspoken pact not to bring it up. To be more precise, we're at odds about it, and we don't want to make things worse. Greg is certain that Kelly is dead. I know she's alive. A mother's heart can't be deceived. Molly clung to Sophia again. This is your daughter's room. Yes, everything's still here, like it was then, the last night before Kelly disappeared. Lie down, Molly. Let yourself have happy dreams. The woman didn't notice how she'd become more intimate. She kissed her son's friend as she had kissed her youngest daughter before bed. Greg was fiddling in the kitchen. Seeing the mother, he asked with a chuckle, "And what was the secret? Did you cure her?" "Nothing much." Sophia's gaze slid over her son's face and froze somewhere outside the window. "Greg, I'm not a superstitious person, but I don't think it's random. She looks so much like our Kelly." The son saw his mother on the verge of a breakdown, and in a heartbeat, Mom threw herself at him. "We had a deal." The woman smiled embarrassedly and crossed her arms over her chest. Yes, I remember. But it goes to my head. And she's almost that age. And that girl looks alike." Greg raised his voice. "There's no resemblance." "Mom, are you trying to convince yourself of that? I thought things had settled down, and you're just stirring things up again." The young man spoke with obvious irritation. He nervously tapped his fingers on the capital, imitating natural stone. Had he known this would be the case and put off meeting Molly? The mother looked directly into her son's eyes, and that look made him wince, as did the woman's words. "Greg, I often catch myself thinking that you don't care at all about your sister. You talk about Kelly as if she were a piece of furniture, not a living person. And that's your sister. I'd hate to think you're so damn close." Greg realized he should say something, but his tongue felt like it was glued to his palate. Sophia looked at him one more time and went to her room. "Don't forget to turn off the kitchen light when you head to bed." The children stayed at Castle Pines for a week. Sophia became very attached to Molly during this time and was happy to tell her the secrets of her favorite homemade recipes. The two women developed a very close relationship almost immediately, which never faltered in 3 years. Molly, at any opportunity, boasted to friends and colleagues at work friendship with her mother-in-law. Sophia is an extraordinary woman. She destroys all the stereotypes that are attributed to mother-in-law. You may not believe me, but she replaced my mother. I'm very grateful to her for that. Representatives of the pessimist clan assured that such attachment is temporary, because any mother will always be on the side of her son. But Greg himself, too, was horrified to notice that his young wife was taking more and more possession of his precious mother's heart every day. The Central District Hospital in Castle Pines was a modern complex, packed with the most advanced equipment. But the main value of the hospital was its personnel. Immediately after its opening, not only medical graduates, but also doctors with rich practical experience rushed here. Every time. Passing by the hospital, Sophia thought if it had appeared in our city 10 years earlier, maybe my mom would still be alive. But as they say, fate cannot be ridden on a horse. And this very fate of a successful businesswoman was not easy. Sophia's childhood was really happy. She was the only child in the family, so the love of her parents and grandmother completely went to her alone. Anthony, the girl's father, worked as a foreman at a construction site. He told his daughter about the cities that would surely grow in the vast country. Sophia listened to her father with her mouth open, and then pelted him with her childish questions. "Daddy, when these cities appear, we will be given a big apartment." In those years, there was an acute shortage of normal housing. Most families stood in line for an apartment for decades, but there was little hope of getting their rightful square meters in their lifetime. So those citizens who had a little more money joined a cooperative. Anthony also decided to use this way of improving his living conditions. He once told his wife and daughter, "Girls, I've been thinking at my leisure and decided that we also need to do something about housing. How long can we stay in this room? Because there's been talk of cooperative housing in the family for a long time." Betty immediately objected. "Anthony, you said yourself that the cooperative is an eternal bondage. We'll be paying for it all our lives." The man looked at his wife enigmatically. "It's okay. We'll get by. I was offered a good position here, which means that I will receive almost twice as much." The woman wouldn't give up. "Anthony, what if something happened to you? God forbid. What are we going to do then? I don't think we should rush. The crew is moving forward, and in 5 years we'll get an apartment." "Betty, I'm not dreaming. You know very well that it's an almost unattainable goal to get public housing, and 5 years is not 5 years. We'll live in a dormitory until the end of our lives and grow old in this room, among the mold-covered walls." The woman wouldn't give up. "We could live at my mom's house." "It's not like that. I've offered you many times, but you're as stubborn as a donkey." Sophia watched the argument between her parents, and at the very moment when her mother mentioned the willful animal, she resolutely took her father's side. "Mom, you said we shouldn't call names. You yourself called Daddy a bad word. I also think we should buy an apartment." The 5-year-old girl so colorfully expressed her opinion that her parents could not resist laughing. When the fit of hilarity passed, Anthony, nodding at his daughter, said to his wife, "And see, Betty, Sophia herself decided everything for us. By the way, contrary to your Philistine beliefs, getting into a cooperative today is not so easy. People have money, and many want to invest their savings in housing." The woman asked with undisguised snideness, "Wondering how you will get in?" The man smiled, "And as a worker in the construction industry, I am entitled to benefits. We're already on the list, and now we have until the end of the month to make the first installment." Betty shook her hands. "Anthony, where are we going to get that kind of money? I wonder what you were thinking when you decided to take this gamble." The man shouted smugly without panic, "We have the money. We'll take it from the amount set aside to buy Anthony's car. But our turn is coming up, and if we get out of line now, we'll have to get in again." Sophia saw that her mother was ready to cry and started to calm her down. "Mommy, don't cry. We'll buy a car later." "Really, Daddy?" The woman looked at her daughter, then at her husband. "Yes, you're conspiring against me. Do what you want, but only then blame yourselves." Anthony gave his face a serious expression. "All Betty. No more tears and recriminations. Let's consider this matter closed. As the head of our small family, I believe that for us today is more important than an apartment, a car. Unfortunately, in our country, personal transportation is still a luxury, not a means of rapid movement." Because the score was not in her favor, Betty had to give up and say goodbye until better times to the dream of buying her own car. But long after the momentous conversation with her husband, she often helped out in the kitchen. Everyone will get free public housing by the year 2000, and we will pay. An act worthy of idiots. Of course, Anthony knew about his wife's sentiments, but pretended not to notice it. And soon Betty herself got used to the idea that they would live in a cooperative apartment and would have to pay for all the fun out of their own pockets. In less than 2 years, the 9-story high-rise was completed, and the family moved into a spacious 3-room apartment. Betty couldn't believe her happiness. My God, here, and the stove, and imported in the bathroom, all to the movie maid. She liked the fancy wallpaper, but what really delighted the woman was the presence of the Anthony Loggia. This is where you can store all the things you can't bear to throw away. The man held up his index finger in mourning. I have to disappoint you, because storing junk is not. By the way, it is considered a violation, and the owners risk a hefty fine. While the parents were arguing about where and what to store in the apartment, Sophia silently surveyed the new space. The girl was amazed by the spaciousness, but what shocked her the most was having her own room. It took her several years to get used to the new conditions, so moving into a new apartment took a central place in Sophia's life. This event became a kind of starting point for all the changes that took place afterwards. But the happiness of the Belsky family was short-lived. When Sophia entered the 7th grade, Anthony was seriously injured at work. For several months, the man lay bedridden in the hospital. In those days, Castle Pines residents were treated in an old building that was in need of major repairs. The conditions there were therefore appalling. Betty stayed with her husband around the clock, and it was only through her efforts that the man regained partial ability to move. Of course, after such a serious injury, it was out of the question to return to the previous place of work. The family hoped that the victim would receive at least some compensation for the damage to his health. But the construction organization, where Anthony worked, refused to admit that the accident occurred because of the negligent attitude to the safety of workers. The management shifted all the blame on the shoulders of the victim. Litigation began, which the man took very hard. He became angry and irritable and began to drink frequently. Betty tried to talk some sense into Anthony. You said yourself that hardship hardens a man, and you gave up without a fight. Betty, look at me. I'm not much of a fighter. I can barely move around the apartment. I don't get much in disability. What the hell kind of toughness is that? It's time to get drunk and forget. Arguments like this happened almost daily. As time went on, so did the financial difficulties. Betty worked her ass off at work. But her meager salary was not even enough for a modest meal, let alone other expenses. One day, she started an uncomfortable conversation. My dears, I've been thinking a lot, and I've come to the conclusion that this apartment is a great luxury for us. Sophia was terrified. Mom, what do you want? Back to the dorm. Why go to such extremes? We can move in with Grandma for a while. No, I won't live in a hut on chicken legs. And how will Daddy be in such conditions? Granny has everything outside, toilet and water. Betty mumbled confusedly. I hadn't thought of that. But there's another option, to exchange our apartment for a smaller one. Anthony had been silent up to that point, but when his wife brought up the exchange, he confidently told Betty to stop. There's not much left to pay off. The woman screamed hysterically at Anthony. We don't have enough to eat, and you keep telling us to wait. If this keeps up, we're gonna die. Betty, don't yell. I'll figure something out, but don't be in a hurry to sell the apartment. Mark my word, that soon will begin such processes that their own home will be the highest measure of security. I was not surprised by such a long monologue of my father, because his disability made him sullen and not talkative. Many times the man made attempts to find a use for his strength, but everything turned out to be a failure. To get out of his chronic lack of money, Betty worked double shifts. The woman would come home and collapse from exhaustion. I don't know how much strength I have left. My life doesn't feel like a normal race. I've seen a motorcyclist at the circus run up the wall. If he suddenly slows down, he'll fall off and get smashed to bits. I feel like I'm in the shoes of such a motorcyclist. Sophia did not pay much attention to such reasoning of her mother, but tried to ease the plight of her parents and often helped her after school in the sewing shop, where Betty had been working for many years, sewing blankets and bed linen. Sophia quickly mastered the technique and often sat behind the car instead of her mother. The women were murmuring behind her back, "Good girl, she's helping her mother, just as long as she doesn't get caught by the bosses." But someone must have snitched. Call Sophia. And the shop steward caught Sophia in the act one day. She hurled insults at her mother. "Betty, what are you doing? You haven't been yourself lately, and I have a suspicion. Have you been drinking with your crippled husband?" Such a statement sounded insulting. But the mother kept silent, lowered her eyes, and clutched her daughter's hand tightly. By this, she made Sophia realize that she should keep silent and bear it. And Sophia at first obeyed her mother's wish, but then she decided to be cunning. She put a subservient smile on her face and turned to the forewoman. "Evelyn, don't scold Mom. It's my fault. I talked her into it. You know I'd love to work for you. I love it here. I'm in awe of machines that do their own work." Sophia was praising the production at every turn, and the boss looked at her, pulling her eyes out. When the girl stopped, Evelyn said with heartfelt awe, "Good girl, we need people like that. You can come when you have free time and desire to learn a profession. And after graduation, I promise you employment." Of course, Sophia didn't earn any money, but her mother received monthly bonuses. So with Sophia's help, the family regained a more or less stable position. And soon Anthony himself, not without the help of friends, found a job. All the years of being on disability, the man practiced hard, and such diligence yielded results. Anthony began to walk a little with the help of a cane. Before that, he moved on crutches and sometimes used a wheelchair. One day, his father came home and happily announced that the girls were hiring me. Betty was surprised. "Who's got the hots for you? They recommended me to a company to guard a warehouse. Work doesn't beat lying down." In honor of such an event, Betty even decided to organize a party in the house. In the evening, when the guests went home, she raised her eyes to the ceiling and quietly said to her daughter Sunny, "God must have heard my prayers. Maybe he'll give us at least a quiet life." Anthony only worked for a couple months. One morning, he didn't come back from duty. On her mother's orders, Sophia ran to the warehouses to see if her father was drinking with his friends again. But the old lady girl found already cocknut father's body. Doctors then said that death came instantly because some vessel exploded. It was a terrible blow, and Betty couldn't take it this time. Working for their pestilence and the death of her husband became a fertile ground for the development of diabetes mellitus. The disease proceeded in a severe form, and by the age of 50, the woman was almost blind. Sophia's grandmother liked to repeat, "If trouble came from the yard and the gate," and prepare to take a lot of misfortunes. As a child, she did not realize the true meaning of this proverb. Only left alone with a pile of problems and a sick mother, the girl felt the meaning of this common phrase. If earlier she still allowed herself to dream about the future, about studying at an institute or at least a professional college, then after the death of her father, all hopes collapsed. Sophia even had to give up the graduation party at school because she had nothing to buy a decent dress and shoes with. The girl received her diploma and the next day went to the garment factory where her mother used to work. Evelyn met her kindly. "Our gold Sophia, how nice to see you. Are you just checking up on us, or are you here on business?" The girl Lipatova on business Evelyn and briefly recounted the essence of her problem. The head of the workshop invited her to her office. "Come, let's talk, because it's too noisy here and there are a lot of extra ears." The last remark the woman made was not in vain. Sophia noticed that her appearance had aroused a lot of interest in the female staff. She followed Evelyn into a small room with a single window. The lady of the room got right down to business. "Of course I'll help you, because your mother has done so much for our enterprise. But I must warn you that perhaps our shop will soon be closed down or sold. There are such talks, but nothing can be fixed, because nobody needs unprofitable enterprises. This is the oil picture. So if you have other options, it is better not to take risks. But Sophia had no such options, and she stayed at the factory until the very end of the existence of this once successful production. They closed the factory just before Christmas, paying the workers a small compensation. Sophia didn't know how to tell her mother that she was out of work, but Betty understood. "Sophia, don't cry. I've known for a long time that our office would be shut down one day. It was coming. Don't despair. We're not going down with you. We'll sell Grandma's house. There are buyers already. We'll see what happens." The money from the sale of this old house in the suburbs was not enough for long, and Castle Pines was in a time of chronic unemployment. Sophia ran for temporary part-time jobs, but the situation was getting worse by the day. Once again, a mother helped with advice. The daughter will allow Evelyn too. She is kind, always helped everyone, and swore only to maintain authority. Sophia was surprised, "I wonder, and how your former boss will help us." "Oh, you. I'm sick to my stomach. I spend most of my time in my apartment, sitting by the window, and I can still keep up with the events in the country. Haven't you heard that everyone's rushing into cooperatives now? It's a time when you have to seize the moment. A lot of people I know have gone into commerce. What can I say? Strange things are happening around here. Not so long ago, they were kicking out drug dealers, and even gave them jail sentences. But now you can freely sell whatever you want." The girl listened to her mother, but didn't understand what she was getting at. "Mom, what does this have to do with your Evelyn?" "Because she's had a career change too. Now she goes to Poland or something and brings back fancy things. Talk to her, see if she'd be willing to help." Sophia found the former head of the sewing factory at the market, but the girl did not immediately recognize in the broken but brightly painted saleswoman always pull up Evelyn. She was the first to call out to her. "Sophia, hi. Where you headed? You looking to buy something? Or are you looking for someone?" The girl said, "I'm looking for you, Evelyn." There's a problem with the tone again. A note of concern could be heard in the woman's voice, and Sophia felt uncomfortable. But it was too late to retreat, and she, with a vacantly cheerful net, informed an old acquaintance. "Yes, there is such a thing. I apologize for daring to bother you, but there's no one else to turn to. My mom and I were left with a broken home. We had to sell Grandma's house for next to nothing, but the money was barely enough for a year. There's no work in town, and I can't leave my mom alone. Maybe you can tell me where I can get a job." Evelyn gave the girl an appraising look. "You know what, baby, come to me as my assistant. I'm not really comfortable with the goods, and then stand here. My system is well organized, so there won't be any problems." Sophia, not listening to her benefactor, did not agree. "I'm fine with it. I will do whatever you say." Evelyn shook her head. "You didn't even ask about the salary. That's the most important thing in this business. I don't care, as long as I have enough for my bread. There's enough for bread and even butter and sausage. If you obey me, I'll pay you by the piece. That is, it depends on sales." Since Sophia did not yet have the necessary life experience, she did not go into the intricacies of entrepreneurship. That same day, she and a group of local officials went to Denver to pick up the goods. Before the trip, Evelyn gave Sophia detailed instructions while keeping an eye on the intern, and instructed the driver to make sure there were no hiccups anywhere, and helped the girls. The handsome brunette, and threw Sophia a searing glance in her direction. "Don't worry, Evelyn. I promise everything will be all right." The young man was the owner of the name Leo. He had immediately set his eyes on the pretty assistant of the hostess and entertained her with incredible stories all the way. Sophia did not enjoy the attention of guys at school, so she looked at Leo as a down-to-earth deity. Of course, that first day, she couldn't even guess how her infatuation would end. The young man had helped her stock up on supplies and then loaded the bags into the car himself. To learn. With envy watched this scene, one woman did not hold back. "How touching. It reminds me of my youth. Sophia, don't miss out on such a prominent beau. It's rare to find such nice guys these days. The girl is not used to such remarks, and blushed. This moment did not escape Leo. Without paying attention to them, these ladies have been through fire and water. They will still say so much that you will get tired of being surprised. Indeed, all the way back the women told jokes. And at the end, they started telling obscene stories. Sophia did not have to be in such company. And she blushed. Then pale Leo paid absolutely no attention to the obscene talk of the goods and only occasionally winked at the girl. Evelyn was pleased with the assortment of goods Sophia had brought. "You're a good girl. Do you have a sense of taste? These people are ready to give everything they have in their wallets for imported rags. That's why the main rule in our business is to please the customer." Sophia caught everything her mistress said on the fly. The girl quickly mastered the peculiarities of market trading, and Evelyn encouraged her to sell even non-liquid goods. The efforts of the novice merchant were positively reflected in the household. The refrigerator was once again stocked with quality products, and Betty was able to receive full treatment. There were changes in Sophia's personal life as well. The joint trips brought the girl closer to Leo, and she accepted his advances with undisguised pleasure. The hostess also noticed that her driver did not leave her assistant. Guided by the best intentions, Evelyn decided to hurry up the young man. "Leo, you're acting like an inexperienced boy. Women like determined men. If you walk like a bull and moo, she'll sleepily find another beau." This advice was given publicly, right in the marketplace. Frill-seeking commodities broke up with laughter, and the couple in love did not know where to escape from the attention of everyone. Apparently, in retaliation to the women or because of the desire to prove that he is a real man, immediately without leaving the counter, made Sophia an offer. Quite original in form. "Why, Sophia, marry me. We'll improve the country's demographics together. I don't promise golden mountains, but you won't get bored with me." The humorous tone and inappropriate situation did not embarrass the girl. She immediately agreed to marry a man she knew almost nothing about. Sophia was shocked when her daughter told her the news. "Sophia, you can't do that. Marriage is a serious step in every woman's life. You don't know anything about it, Leo." Sophia didn't expect such a reaction from her mother. She started to calm her down. "Helen's mom is very nice. He doesn't even smoke and does sports, and I think I love him." Betty cried. "She thinks you're not even sure how you feel. How are you going to live your life? Without me, you'll be lost." And then Betty said with childlike naivete, "Mom, I'm not going anywhere. We have a big apartment. Helen's renting a room from an old lady, and you don't mind if he moves in with us." Betty reluctantly agreed to a shared living arrangement, but she'd disliked her son-in-law from day one. But he returned the favor, so Sophia often had to play the role of referee during the verbal fights that often took place in the kitchen. One day, when her son-in-law was not at home, Betty said to her daughter Sophia, "Can't you see that your husband isn't who he says he is? It's written all over his face, and I know in my heart that your marriage is going to end." Sadly, the girl has a grudge against her mother. "Thank you, Mommy, for your good wishes. You're used to thinking only about yourself. That's why you don't like everything I do." After this exchange of revelations, the daughter and mother stopped talking for a long time. Betty thought out a bit. It wasn't until Greg was born that the little grandson became the meaning of life for the sick woman. He, too, rejoiced at the birth of his son and made grand plans for the future. In an optimistic stroke, he promised his wife Sophia, "We will soon live like they show in the movies. We will build a 2-story house with a swimming pool, buy a luxury car. She will go to an elite school." Sophia wanted to believe in these bright prospects, but these plans were not destined to come true, because Leo got involved in a dirty story. Sophia remembered that winter day when masked men burst into their apartment and dragged her husband out of bed. The little son was screaming in fright, and the law enforcers, ignoring the children's cries, laid her husband face down on the floor and twisted his hands behind his back. The young woman instinctively rushed to the aid of her beloved with a shout, "What are you doing? You are treating him for the time being." but one of the aliens roughly pushed her away. Sophia hit her head painfully against the wall, so she could not hear well how her husband promised her Sophia in parting. "I will definitely come back. You just wait for me." Neighbors watched from the windows as men in camouflage led them Helen with the long back arms to the car. A few days later, rumors spread through the neighborhood that Sophia's husband was involved in the death of a prominent businessman. Acquaintances began to avoid Betty and Sophia, and friends and distant relatives stopped answering their calls. Even Evelyn, embarrassed, once said, "You realize that this is a rather delicate situation. You can't go against public opinion. So you and I are going to have to part ways. There's too much at stake, and I can't risk my reputation. Besides, I'm going to buy a little store in the region." The landlady paid the girl a substantial compensation and made it clear that all relations between them. From that moment on, all relations between them were terminated. Later, Sophia learned that Evelyn had become the owner of a chain of stores selling branded clothes. Helen was given 10 years in a strict regime colony. The young woman did not want to hear about this person anymore and changed her surname to her maiden name. The housing cooperative also had to make new documents. Only the patronymic was left from the native father. Public opinion affected the life of the young woman. She unsuccessfully searched for a permanent job, contenting herself with casual earnings, but the heaviest blow was the death of her mother. Betty's condition deteriorated sharply and required expensive medicines, for which the daughter had no money. Black clouds again thickened over the head of the young woman, and she no longer believed that the sun would again smile on her bright streets. Man is an amazing creature. He gets used to even the most unbearable conditions of life. Sophia, too, quickly got used to her new status, and against reasonable logic, she even managed to use this unfavorable circumstance to her advantage. After all, she had to survive not only on her own, but also to raise her son, and that required money. And she didn't have any. There was no one to consult with, and the woman was in total despair. One day, she went straight to the city administration. The officials were surprised by the visit of such an ambiguous person, but no one wanted to take responsibility. Sophia was now running around the offices until she realized that it would do nothing. She was ready to give up and go home with nothing, when an inner voice quietly whispered to her, "Sophia, go to the mayor himself, otherwise nothing will work." The woman timidly opened the reception door, but the receptionist looked at her menacingly. "You have to make an appointment to see the mayor." Sophia asked then to make an appointment for me. The receptionist pierced her again with an unfriendly look. "What's the job for?" "I can't find a job. And I have a young son. Everybody has kids, and William is very busy. He can't deal with every single mom separately. Go to the deputy. Or do you want to go to social services?" "Yeah, I've already been to all the offices." The secretary even got up from her spinning wheel in indignation. "Vasia is a chairwoman. Don't yell here. I told you to go to the deputy. It's just next door across from the reception area." But Sophia did not follow the secretary's advice. It was lunchtime, and the woman and her young son were sitting in a corner near the reception area. Greg was enthusiastically engaged in his car, whose wheels kept falling off, so it could not move. The boy rattled the wheels under his nose with the tenacity of a donkey and then tested the toy. Sophia watched her son, and her heart fluttered with pity for the child. "And what, son? There will be a holiday on our street. And then I'll buy you a bicycle and a bunch of different cars." The boy distracted from his occupation. "Mom, it will be soon." The woman did not have time to answer, because at that moment a whole group of people appeared in the corridor. Greg exhaled with admiration. "Wow. Mom, look what cool pictures they have." The son called the professional cameras that were in the hands of two men from this group. The woman did not have time to think about the purpose for which she had come to the administration of this delegation, as the door of the reception room opened sharply and the mayor, flashing a flawless smile, came out to the guests. "Come in. It is a pleasure to have our humble Castle Pines honored with media attention." A hunch flashed through Sophia's mind. It was the television crew. What happened next was spontaneous. The young mother had not expected herself to be so bold. She jumped out of her hiding place, interrupting the exchange of pleasantries between the mayor and the media. "William, you're the only one who can help me." The mayor's eyes went beyond orbits, and his two aides tried to push back the insolent. "Excuse me, hospital," but cameras were clicking on all sides. And a cheerful male voice pronounced today, when democratic principles have become the norm of everyday life, representatives of local authorities try to be closer to the people. The mayor of small Castle Pines is no stranger to the aspirations of ordinary people who can ask for help at any time. Our film crew was lucky because we witnessed such an action. Good mercy. This is a young resident of the city, appealed to the mayor of William. After all, someone slipped the microphone. Sophia card, and then a cheerful voice asked, "Tell me, what brings you to the city administration today?" Sophia felt how bad. That pushes up to her throat. Dozens of eyes stared at her uninterruptedly, and the cameras made an unpleasant beeping sound. The mayor was expecting a response too, but his look didn't bode well. Behind him, someone whispered in a panic, "Woman, don't be silent. Say something." Unexpectedly, Greg answered for his mother. The boy stretched out his hand to the microphone and loudly announced that my mother and I had come from work. My grandmother died, and my dad went somewhere else. This answer of the child caused indescribable delight among those present. Even the head of the administration smiled, and the young reporter jumped up to Sophia and whispered to the cameraman, "Take a close-up of the boys." He then asked a few simple questions to the kid, and I didn't even stumble once while answering. Everyone looked at the boy with emotion. Then the microphone was passed to the mayor, and he confidently promised a solution to the citizens' issue. "I will take it under my personal control. The administration of Castle Pines will try to do everything possible to eliminate the existing problem. After all, the main task of the authorities is to improve the lives of ordinary people. And that's why we try to understand the problems of every citizen." The young reporter was happy to pick up on it, and we will follow the development of events. Sophia could not come to her senses for a long time, despite the fact that the cameras were already turned off. The aides escorted the woman and child to the mayor's office, and the head of the district smiled kindly at the woman. "Well, Sophia, you've caused quite a stir in our sleepy little town, but I have to say, your impromptu speech was a great success, although I haven't gotten to the bottom of it yet. But I can tell you were definitely in the right place at the right time tonight. To be honest, I was stunned by your sudden exit, and your little boy deserves a special commendation. Well done. He's a little boy, but he's already standing up for his mom. Give me your 5. Greg extended his hand to the mayor. At that moment, for the first time in his life, he felt important and proud of what he had done. The mayor once again promised the young mom to get her a job. On the same day in the evening, a report with their participation was shown on TV. Not even 10 minutes after the news, the home phone began to ring. The most surprising thing was that the first to remind of themselves were those who had not so long ago denied her friendship. But the main events awaited Sophia ahead. The next morning at exactly 9 o'clock, she received a call from the administration and was asked to come urgently to the office of the deputy mayor. The official met the woman with a smile on duty. "We discussed all the options with William yesterday. How do you feel about business?" This direct question should have caused the woman confusion, but she immediately answered positively. "I helped my landlady at one time, but she left Castle Pines for the regional center. She has a chain of stores there." The official happily interrupted the visitor. "You see, as they say, desire and labor will overcome everything. Moreover, you have experience, but I have no education. Education is something that comes with the job. Today, everyone studies by correspondence, and there is nothing to prevent you from following this example." The deputy mayor talked a lot about the prospects of life in his native Castle Pines, and at the very end of his speech offered the single mom to join the ranks of local entrepreneurs. The sewing shop where you used to work has been idle for several years. Soon there will be an auction, and the enterprise will go under the hammer. I admit that the administration has tried many times to find a good owner, but we have no luck with the buyer. No one can withstand even the insurance period. They think that investments in this enterprise will not justify themselves. Of course, there are difficulties, but you can't do without them in any business. A good owner or hostess will be able to find the key to the lock with a secret. Sophia realized that the deputy mayor was talking about her as a future business owner. She exclaimed in despair, "But I can't do it. And then I don't have any money." The official rubbed his hands together. "You can do it, and we'll help you. Especially since the case has gotten a lot of publicity. And now the TV crews won't be able to get away from us. I'm sure it won't be a week. How will you get voluntary sponsors? That's the kind of people we have in this country. They will give their last ruble for a good cause." The deputy mayor turned out to be right, and the young entrepreneur dared to start from scratch. They began to write articles about their business. Several times Sophia was invited to television. Patrons of the arts were also active, willing to help the enterprising woman. Max was among the voluntary helpers. Sophia always remembered her second husband with awe. But Greg, unlike his mother, even after many years thought of the workers with hatred. The morning talk had awakened these unpleasant feelings in his soul, and he showed up at the office already on edge. Wanting to put his thoughts in order a little, he headed for his office. But no sooner had Greg opened the door than he heard the cheerful voice of Kevin. "Greg, are you late today? I've been waiting for you." The last thing he wanted to do now was to listen to the head of the supply department. So Greg made a short arrangement. "My wife got sick last night and was taken to the hospital by ambulance." Kevin's face changed. "And what happened to your wife? If it's a secret, you don't have to tell me. I realize you can't tell me everything about family matters. There's nothing secret. Molly never complained of appendicitis, and then suddenly it kicked in. Sophia must have gone to visit her sister-in-law this morning. That's why I see she's late. Greg, you have an extraordinary mom. Are you lucky to have her?" Greg wrinkled his nose. "Kevin, I know all about my mother. If it's a matter of business, why did you just let your thorns out? Did I step on your tail? Kevin, let's not turn my office into a place for unnecessary discussion." Kevin took offense, as evidenced by his flaring ears and unkind eyes. He said emphatically formally, "All right, Greg, let's switch to the business language of communication. If you are not already aware of it, I have to inform you that Sophia has instructed our department to buy materials and fittings." Greg impatiently interrupted. "I am aware of that. If that's all you wanted to tell me, I dare not detain you any longer." Kevin minted separately every syllable. "You're wasting your breath, Greg. To me, it's a very narrow neck, and not everyone can get out." "Greg Boyle, are you threatening me?" "God forbid. Absolutely not. As a delicate man, I just want to draw your attention to one very important point. You don't shit where you feed." The last words Kevin said, clearly alluding to his failed deal. "I warned you it was dangerous to mess with Cleopatra. And you didn't believe Uncle Kevin. Be thankful your mother doesn't know you're being arbitrary. I am a deeply decent man and do not engage in whistleblowing." Greg felt cold sweat rolling down his back in large data. Barely audible, he whispered, "Thank you, Konstantinovich." Kevin headed for the exit, but the very doors turned around Greg. "Do you want some ethical advice? Keep it simple, and people will be attracted to you." Kevin closed the door behind him, and Greg sat down in the chair, leaving his head back. "What day is it? Molly gave out a number tonight. Then my mom surprised me. And now Kevin's trying to teach me about life. How much does he look like my dead stepfather?" The wheel of memory has turned again this morning and taken a turn back in time. And, as the song goes, Greg took a trip down the waves of his memory. In his 80s, Greg perceived everything that happened in the most vivid colors. It's adults who can color life in halftones. But children are clear, day and night. Friend or foe, Max bursts into their lives, suddenly disrupting the order of the house. Yes, his appearance only entitled him to his mother's attention and love. So the boy's first reaction was indignation. Then he did not realize that his mother had decided on this important step not immediately. Most likely, she had been seeing Max for some time, but she did not dare to invite him home. It was late fall when Sophia told her son, "We'll have a guest today. What do you think about it?" Greg looked at his mother with a sidelong glance and muttered, "I don't think so. Why do we need a guest?" The mother was confused and began to explain that people should socialize because it's boring to be alone. The son looked at her and kept wrinkling his nose. "Mom, I know all about friendship and good relationships, but I think that we are very good together. But if you want more friends, you can invite them over. Just don't make me smile and say anything stupid." "Sophia," laughed Greg. "What do you think?" My boy didn't understand the meaning of the word and remained silent. Only at dinner he asked who your guest was. The woman had been waiting for this question and answered readily. "Have you seen him before?" "Once. Remember, when we bought the factory, different people came and offered to help us. I remember that day very well, because one of the sponsors gave him a game console. True, it quickly broke down. Recalls that moment. It was nice. This is the man who gave me the toy." "No, son. That man gave us some cars. They were used, but they were in good working order. His name is Max." The boy asked with feigned bewilderment. "What?" "A sewing machine." Greg came in, and with laughter, and the mother waited for the fit of hilarity to pass. "Son, I'm talking to you seriously, and you're a fool, studying." "Okay, Mom, I won't laugh anymore. Just promise me that you won't marry this Max." Sophia obviously didn't expect such an ultimatum from her son. "Greg, are you too young to give me conditions?" The boy parried, "But I have rights too. I don't want some uncle living in our house and you making me call him father. Guys in our class told me that about their stepfathers v." The boy went into a hysterical screaming fit and hid in his room. Sophia, for fear of hurting the child's wounded psyche, changed her plans. She knocked on her son's room when he opened the door and said, "Calm down. We won't have guests today. Where will you go on a date?" "I'll come with that Max." "You guessed it." The woman hugged her son and kissed him on the top of his head. "Zhika, don't be so mean. You choose your own friends at school. Notice that I do not interfere in this process at all. Let me make my own choices." When his mother went to live, he felt so sad that he almost declared. He barely waited for his mother to return and right in the hallway expressed his final decision. "Mom, let this your Max comes to us. Then I am very bad alone without you." Max won the heart of the boy that from the first meeting, he did not start to pussyfoot with him, and spoke like an adult, although his mother also always took into account his opinion. But Mom is a woman, and Max is a grown man, and he is, as the boys at school used to say. Very quickly, Greg became friends with his stepfather. Max drove him in his car to the zoo where the animals lived. He even let the boy sit behind the wheel of his car a few times. There were many more things that his classmates went in with envy of the farmer. Sophia was glad that her men had found common ground. One day she told her son, "Now, we have a real family." "You like that, Greg," Uncle Max admitted to the ladies. "He's really nice. He's fun to be with. He told me so many things. He also promised to take me night fishing." "Mom, I'll catch a bream like that, or even by myself." The boy showed with his hands the size of the fish he promised to catch. One day, he himself asked his stepfather, "Can I call you father?" Max had been waiting for this question for a long time and could not hide his excitement. "Of course, son, call me father or father. What do you prefer?" But the period of family idyll didn't last long. Greg began to notice that his mother was very fulfilled. With childlike candor, he said, "You need to work out. You'll soon become quite fat. Like our Wendy, a math teacher who really had very lush forms." And this comparison made Sophia smile. No, I won't be like that, because it's a temporary fullness. The boy stared at his mother in bewilderment. Is there such a thing? It does. I was so fat once before. And then you were born, and I lost weight immediately. Greg was at an age when he knew how babies came to be. So his mother's confession came as a shock to him. He looked at her smiling face, and indignation rose in his heart, which burst out with a scream. You're going to have a baby, but I don't want one. The boy was beating hysterically. Sophia could not calm him. The unhappy woman could not have imagined that her son would take the news so violently. She tried to convince him that he would have a brother or sister and that he would have more fun. The mother did not realize at that time that her son did not want to share her with anyone. He hardly accepted Max only because this person fulfilled his desires, that is, brought a certain benefit. And what benefit could there be in having another child? Greg refused to understand. Sophia hoped that everything would settle down when the baby came into the world, but she was wrong when the tiny lump in a pink envelope was brought home. Her newfound brother wrinkled his nose squeamishly. She stinks. I don't even want to go near her. Time passed, but the boy never gave up his position. Kelly was growing up, and her happy parents rejoiced at her successes, but in Greg's heart, hatred blossomed. He hated his mother for betraying him, hated his stepfather for not being a real father to him, but he hated his little sister the most. Max was the first to notice that there was something wrong in their family. Greg always kept his ear to the ground and often eavesdropped on adult conversations to make sure he didn't miss anything important. He heard his stepfather reprimanding his mother in the kitchen. Sophia, something has to be done about this. It's not normal. The guy's really burning with hate. The mother tried to stand up for her son. Max, I think you're losing it. He's going through puberty, so he's showing his temper. Sophia, but I've seen with my own eyes how much hatred he looks at Kelly. I've been alarmed before by some things that I didn't pay much attention to. Frankly, I fear for our daughter. Please talk to your son. Maybe he'll listen to you. We had a serious conversation that same evening, but Greg descended into rudeness from the first second. Yeah, screw Kelly. Do you even like her? Don't touch me. Not until you graduate, and you won't see me at all. That was the cry of a spoiled egomaniac soul. It was only at that moment that Sophia realized that in 16 years she had never gotten to know her son. As promised, Greg disappeared from home after receiving his diploma. He didn't even come on vacation because he didn't want to meet his sister. And then the woman accidentally learned that her son had somehow miraculously found Leo. This news stunned her, and she herself went to the city where her son studied. But Greg wouldn't even listen to his mother. Mom, you're too late with your instructions. I'm all grown up now, and I'll decide for myself what to do and who to talk to. But I promise I won't bother you, and I'm not going to give up my own father just because something bad happened between you two a long time ago. For a few years, the guy really didn't show up, only called his mother occasionally. But communication with his own father changed his outlook on life. Now Greg recalled with horror how he decided to take revenge. And this action he had decided to coincide with his half-sister's coming of age. The unhappy memories, even more than the conversations with Kevin, spoiled Greg's mood to find some equilibrium. He ventured to deal with his wife's medical condition. Sophia disliked hospitals because medical facilities conjured up unpleasant associations for her. After all, she had spent many days and nights with her mother at the bedside of her paralyzed father. For 24 hours a day, she did not leave her dying mother's side. Therefore, the mere thought that she would have to cross the threshold of the hospital caused panic terror in the woman's soul. Probably, this fear was reflected on her face when she asked the post nurse, "I'm here to see Molly." She's a postdoc girl who looked anxiously at the visitor. "Don't worry, your Molly is fine. She's in Ward 6, probably already awake from the anesthesia." Sophia threw a white robe on her shoulders and, trying not to make noise, walked down the corridor near the ward where her sister-in-law was lying. She stopped and knocked for some reason. Someone shouted loudly, "Come in. I'm sorry we can't meet." The cheerful voice belonged to a girl who was lying by the window with an open book. In total, there were 4 people in the ward, and Sophia did not immediately find Molly. She turned to the very girl who had invited her. Where is she till now? At the very door. There are no others yet. Molly spoke up. You can't argue with that. Maria, you're screaming for all the right times to be awake, and at least be sick. It's not like I've never been in a hospital. Only when I was a kid, I had a bug in my ear. The doctors could barely get it out. Molly turned her gaze to Sophia. I knew you'd be the first to visit me. Zurich must have scared you. On the contrary, he was very tactful about everything. Sophia took her sister-in-law's hand. Tell me, how do you feel? Reluctant Maria raised her voice. I'm fine. Everything will be running by evening. Molly looked toward her companion. Maria, could you be quiet for a minute? I'm less than 24 hours in this ward, and I'm already tired of you. Let's be sad. Girlfriend, I'm supposed to be discharged today, so you're going to miss me. Molly waved her hands helplessly. I'm sorry, Sophia, but I guess we won't be able to have a normal conversation. All right, I'll drop by tomorrow. You don't have to bother. I'm not sick enough to visit every day. Dad's worried too. He should be here soon. Greg told him. I told you not to panic. Molly tried to sit up, but immediately wrinkled in pain. Her mother-in-law immediately jumped up to her. Let me help you. Maria's daughter raised her voice again. I dream of such a mother-in-law, although I do not want to get married, but still dreaming is not harmful. Well, I won't bother you. I'll pack my clothes. The girl began to put things in a plastic bag and accompanied this process with clear statements. Sophia began to say goodbye to her sister-in-law, and at that moment a nurse came into the room. Queen, you're ready. The mouse stretched out, sitting down, threw off her hand to the invisible ones at the visor. Always ready. Sophia stared at the girl's hand, not immediately realizing what had caught her attention. Molly noticed that there was something wrong with her mother-in-law. What's wrong? Nothing, I'm fine. But the woman's eyes were fixed on her sister-in-law's neighbor. Meanwhile, Maria grabbed her bag and slipped past, and only then Sophia realized that the object of her concern was the silver bracelet adorning the girl's wrist. She hastily said goodbye to her sister-in-law. Molly, I have to go. I'll call you tonight. The woman hoped to catch up with Masha in the hallway and ask the girl about how she got this bracelet. But right in the doorway, she ran into Molly's father. Peter, did you scare me? The man didn't expect to meet under such unusual circumstances either. You almost knocked me over. Sophia, is there a fire somewhere? No, I'm just afraid I'm going to miss a little man. Well, I won't keep you. She ran down the corridor, but Maria was nowhere to be seen. Sophia couldn't find her in the check room or the waiting room. She jumped outside, but there were only a few men in hospital uniforms walking around. There were no women around at all. Sophia sat down on a bench. She tried to calm herself. Did you just think it was the same bracelet Kelly had gotten for her birthday? There aren't many trinkets like that on the market. Go to any jewelry store and you're bound to find a similar piece. Suddenly, Sophia's familiar voice sounded nearby. What's wrong with you? I must admit that I am concerned about your condition, so I said goodbye. You shouldn't be, Peter. I'm fine. Don't be fooled by an experienced detective. I have a keen eye, and I knew immediately that something had come up that caused you instant stress. Tell me, I may be able to help you. Although Molly and Greg had been married for over 3 years, their parents met very rarely and mostly on major holidays. So their acquaintance was casual, and they had never had a frank conversation. The woman was silent for a moment, and then looked hopefully at the matchmaker. You know, Peter, can you really help me? The man sat down next to her, and by his expression, it was easy to guess that he had awakened a professional instinct. I think I know what prompted you to chase after that girl who ran out of the room a second before I arrived. Probably tennis past or something else. It was more like a sign from above. Aha! I didn't realize you were superstitious. Sometimes there are moments in life when you start to believe in a higher power. It rarely happens to me, but this morning my grandmother came to mind. And then that girl with the bracelet. You intrigue me. If you could tell me more about it. And Sophia told her daughter-in-law's father how many years ago she and her husband gave their daughter a bracelet for her coming of age, which was made to order by a jeweler she knew. It was a personalized piece. There's an engraving on the inside. Kelly had long dreamed of such a thing and was very happy with the gift. A few days later, it disappeared. Tell me, under what circumstances did your daughter disappear? Tears appeared in the woman's eyes. She took a handkerchief out of her purse. I'm sorry, Peter. I'm sorry, Peter. Don't I know what it's like to lose a child? I've had many such cases in my practice, and unfortunately, they don't always end well. I'm still hopeful. I feel in my heart that my Kelly is alive. I was so reluctant to let her go on that unfortunate camping trip, and my husband said you can't stop a girl from doing what she likes. Kelly was very fond of traveling, and that day they went to the lakes in groups. Old people claimed that there were places of power there and told all sorts of legends. Greg went too, because he was worried about the young people. He is almost 10 years older than Kelly. Peter waited for the story to continue, but Sophia was silent. Only after about 5 minutes she said with a kind of frightening doom, Kelly's disappearance was only discovered in the morning. The boys searched for her. They went to all the neighboring villages, but no one had seen the girl. It was as if she'd vanished into thin air. Her husband couldn't bear the loss. For more than a week, the search was conducted, but it did not yield results, and Max had a heart attack. He loved his daughter very much. Sophia burst into tears. The matchmaker gave her a chance to cry. You cry, to ease your soul. I promise I'll try to find out what happened on that camping trip. Did your son tell you anything about what happened? He's the key witness. The woman waved her hand. Greg was asleep and didn't see or hear anything. He was with the rest of the campers looking for his sister. So many years had passed, and it was unlikely that he would remember any details now. Sophia was silent, as if remembering something important. Peter, maybe the fact that we haven't found Kelly's papers is relevant. Her passport and driver's license disappeared with her. Your daughter was driving the car on her own. She hasn't gotten behind the wheel yet, but her father promised to buy her a small car. These are important details. As soon as I know anything definite, I'll let you know. But the first thing I'll do is try to find this girl who's the mystery bracelet. Sophia took a long look. Jenna saw her off. She was suddenly at peace, like that time. After praying in church, Kelly. Jenna was the name she was using now. She felt out of sorts. She'd been a mess since this morning. She'd even managed to forget her apartment keys on the nightstand. Her mind was racing with unhappy thoughts. What am I supposed to do now? It is known that I will have to open the door and then repair the lock or buy a new one. The landlady will find out exactly, nail me, or give me a day to evict. That's worse than the first option. With such not cheerful thoughts, Kelly appeared in the office of the company, where she worked as a courier for a little over a year. The head of the department immediately jumped on her. Jenna, where do you go? Like where? Running your errands? Delivering mail to the addresses you gave me. You need to move fast. You're young. It always pissed Jenna off when underachievers came out and pretended to be important. So what, Miranda? If I'm young, I should be running around like a horse. By the way, you're not much older than me. Don't compare. You're a long way from me. The girl snapped. To your place. Don't worry. I don't claim it. The superintendent smirked. What do you care? Go to work. I still have to distribute advertising brochures for today, and then to prepare for tomorrow's report for the month. Isn't that a lot for one person? That's your direct responsibility. That's right, Miranda. You've got half the department working their asses off, and I have to run around for everyone. Jenna voiced her displeasure with a deep sense of contempt for the slackers who made up the bulk of the company's staff for the umpteenth time this year. She thought wistfully that she had been wasting her time in this office, wishing she could make herself feel better. she muttered. Did I have a choice? My whole life has become one endless quest, and I don't know when I'll reach the finish line. From the height of her years, the girl scolded herself for that childish act, but she couldn't afford to go back in time because she knew what her disappearance from home had led to. Many times she turned back in her mind the events of 10 years ago and came to the conclusion that she would have done exactly the same thing today. Kelly learned to feel first and then speak. One of her first childhood memories was of her older brother's face contorted with anger. When her parents weren't around, he would scare her. Later, Greg began to apply to her younger sister more harsh measures of influence, pouring ice water and saying at the same time, "Die damn doll." Often, a loving sibling specially fed her sweets to make her grandfather appear. He would sneak her cat food and laugh at her when she drank the stuff. Of course, when Kelly was very young, she thought her brother was playing with her. But as time went on, it came to her that it wasn't play, but a sophisticated kind of bullying. It was useless to complain to her mother about her brother's behavior because she thought her daughter was making it up. "Kelly, this is all your fantasy. You want me to believe them." Only her father tried to protect her from Greg's bullying. Life became a little easier when Greg went to college. There was peace and quiet in the house at once. All the parental love went to her alone. But one day her brother came back, and Kelly realized that he was up to something, and her premonitions were right. One day she saw Greg talking to a man she didn't know at all by accident. This was a man she had never met before at Castle Pines and decided to follow her brother around a bit. The man didn't evoke any positive emotions. He was, what would be the right way to put it, a very unpleasant type. Decently dressed, quite handsome, but he was repulsive at once. Kelly didn't speak to him, of course, but it was enough for her to get a good look at him. He reminded her of someone, but who was it she hadn't realized right away? It wasn't until the 4th or 5th day of following her brother that she got close enough to hear what they were talking about. Greg and the man had entered the cafe, and Kelly immediately followed them. She sat down at a table that was behind an archway. The men couldn't see her, but she could hear them. They were talking about her, not just about her, but about their family in general. The more Kelly listened, the more the hairs on her head moved. The brother couldn't think of anything more original than simply getting rid of his hated sister. It was as if the man had even tried to talk him out of it. "Look, Greg, it's not really her fault. It's all her mother's fault. I mean, it's your mother's fault, too. If she'd waited for me to get out of jail, the three of us would still be living together. Dad, don't you ever say anything like that again. She's my mother, and she has a right to live. And the rest of you and your mother, I can work it out somehow. But these, and I want to start with my sister. She's ruined my whole life." The man immediately replied, "Okay, don't boil. If you want to decide, you have to do it. I didn't realize you had such hatred for her. Do you have any idea how we can pull this off? No, you have some experience with this stuff. That's why I came to you for help. So tell me where she goes, where she likes to go. We need to make sure we're on the up and up." Greg started to tell Kelly was afraid to breathe. She was scared because her brother in a mundane voice listed all the things she likes, where she goes, and at the same time discussed with her father where it is more convenient and not possible to take her out, and to do it so cunningly, so that no one would guess anything. Kelly also realized one simple thing. After Greg gets rid of her, he's going after her father. She's going camping with her friends. They love the outdoors. Now, this is where we're gonna get into it. This could be very interesting for us. After listening to everything Greg knew, the man exclaimed, "That's what's needed." The girl could get lost in the woods, drown, fall from somewhere. The options are endless. Greg said, confused, "I don't get it. I'm the one who's supposed to be hating her. Who do you hate so much? Or are you going to send someone else on the trip? Don't worry. You're a big man, and she's just a young girl. You'll be fine. We'll figure it out." "Yeah, but how am I gonna get in with them? They're not my friends. I mean, I know some of them, but we're not friends enough for me to go with them." It's pretty simple. You just tell your mom that it's not safe to go camping like this, that you're worried about your sister. She's a young girl, and you're only going so you can keep an eye on her. The men were long gone. Kelly was still sitting squeezed into the chair. Something had to be done. She knew Greg would convince her mother. Kelly would not be able to change her mind. Rather, the mother would only be strengthened in her decision because her daughter did not want to be in foster care. And the mother will also be very happy that they finally have a good relationship. Everything happened exactly as Kelly expected. Mom was very happy that Greg wanted to accompany Kelly on the camping trip. She kept saying, "Well, that's good. Your brother and sister, you should have a close, trusting relationship." Greg smiled at her sister, and Kelly smiled back. She couldn't show him that she knew or guessed everything. Then the girl might just not make it to the camping trip. She had planned everything diligently. Kelly had always been noted for her ability to think straight, so she double-checked everything several times to make sure there were no overlaps. Greg had to do something with her at night, and on the first night, she knew for sure that he would not give up on anything. That's why she prepared in earnest. Kelly had money, and not the money that her father and mother constantly transferred to her card, but cash, which the girl had been saving for years. For nothing in particular, she just put aside what was left of her pocket money. She was always serious and frugal. Besides, there was nothing to buy because Kelly had everything. She took all the essentials with her, took all the money, especially since no one in the house knew about her savings. And most importantly, the girl toothed invented one address, which she wrote in her father's notebook. It was Helen's address, the woman her father had dated before he met her mother. Kelly's choice was no accident. One day, when Kelly thought she was in love and was having a disagreement with her father, Kelly shouted at him, "Dad, what do you know about love?" "You met Mom. That's all love is." Max smiled then. "Well, that's just your opinion. Do you want me to tell you about a very wonderful woman that I can't forget to this day? I love your mom very much, but Helen, she was probably not only a woman, but the best all-understanding friend." Kelly stared at him, eyes wide open. She had never imagined that her parents could have had anyone in their lives other than each other. "Helen and I met by chance. She was scolding me for almost running over a kitten. Of course, I just saw it late and stopped right away. But I got the best of her. You know, she was so beautiful in her anger, and then she just kind of spun around." Helen fought back to the last. She was married, and she had an invalid husband who didn't do a damn thing but grind her nerves. I'd ask her many times to leave. And then she just kicked me out. Said she was happy with me, that I showed her a different life. But she couldn't leave her husband, and she didn't want to cheat anymore. I understood her. Cheating is too hard for her. Is she so pure, or what? Helen took an oath from me that I would never try to contact her again and try to arrange my personal life. I tried to help her financially at least, but she wouldn't take it. And that was that. Kelly remembered that after her father's story she had stayed up all night. And when she thought about whether the young man she had fallen in love with was capable of such actions, she realized that it was not love after all. Kelly was going to turn to her for help. Greg looked at her the whole time they were getting there. Kelly was getting sick to her stomach. It was his looks. She felt like a hunted victim. Everything went well once everyone settled down. And the girl Kelly was in the tent with fell asleep. She quietly grabbed her backpack and looked outside. Conversation could still be heard in the tents. This meant that Greg would not be doing anything right now. He wouldn't do anything during the night because it would be clear that the culprit for her death was someone who was here. Kelly wasn't going to hide for long. She needed some time to pass. Maybe something would change, or she would figure out how to get out of this whole situation. For now, there were no thoughts in her head. The door was opened by a pretty woman. "Hello. You're here to see me." "Yes, Helen." The woman looked at her with interest. "Yes, I'm Helen. Have we met?" Kelly smiled sadly. "Not really. I'm Max's daughter." Helen stepped back, clasped her hands to her chest. What's wrong with Max? Kelly rushed to reassure her. No, Dad's fine. He told me about you. That's why I came to see you. I need help, but only from someone who won't be thought of. Helen looked at her carefully. Come in. I'm alone now. My daughter has gone to her grandmother's. Strange, but Dad didn't say anything about a daughter. She must have been born later. They talked all night. Helen agreed that it would be better for her to spend some time here. At her place. Don't worry, you're not embarrassing us at all. I've got the world. You two are bound to become friends. How old is she? She's 2 years older than you. You know, after your father and I split up, my husband died a couple years later. He'd been drinking too much, so I decided to find my dad. I even came to your town. But then I found out he got married and his wife was expecting a baby and left right away. Kelly smiled sadly. I guess I should be jealous of your father, resentful of your mom. But it turns out that Mom took your place. No, don't ever think that. Mom met me when I wasn't around. She didn't take my place. Everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. And anyway, it's been years, so it's all in the past. Maria turned out to be a real-world girl. And Kelly also thought they looked a lot alike. Kelly even gave her her bracelet, which was very dear to her. And then Maria came into the room and said, Kelly, your dad's dead. It's all over the internet. That's it. From that moment on, Kelly's life was divided into before and after. Kelly, maybe you should stay. Where are you going? How are you going to live? Like everyone else. Get an apartment, get a job. But we're not kicking you out. Helen wiped away her tears, and Kelly spoke quickly. You understand me. Please, I can't. I can't live peacefully as if nothing had happened. Daddy, it's out of me. I should have realized this would happen. Daddy loved me very much, and Mommy will never forgive me. Let it be so. Mommy was already crying for me and Daddy. And me. I'll start all over again. It's just the way it is. At least give me your new address. No. Helen, please forgive me. I don't deserve to talk to you. Kelly, but you can't hide forever. They're gonna find you. You'll be working. You'll be on the payroll. They'll find you, right? No, no one's gonna find me. Kelly stepped into the night. In the pocket of her jacket was a brand new crystal and a passport, which she had gotten not so long ago for very good money. Almost everything she had. Molly was being discharged in a week. In all that time, Sophia hadn't seen Peter. And then they met nose to nose. Sophia, hello. You are also for Molly. But my daughter has long been more of a part of you than me. So I'll just meet her and walk her home. Well, I won't just let you go. At least we'll have tea together. Peter smiled, clarifying, I won't refuse. Especially since I managed to find out something. Sophia raised her eyebrows upward. So fast. Did you really find out something about that girl? Yes, I did. I didn't know it was possible. I've been looking for my daughter for years, and still no sign of her. Well, Sophia, that's if you're working for a paycheck. But if you work as a friend, it's a different matter. I don't justify my colleagues at all, but that's life. The woman nodded sadly. Yes, unfortunately, you're right. Molly sadly asked her mother-in-law, didn't Greg come? No, Molly, he couldn't. The thing is that we have some changes in the firm, and now he has to work hard. Under Kevin's guidance, he'll try to come early today, he promised, and he said hello. Molly smiled. I can imagine what kind of mood he'll be in. I've heard enough about Kevin. Sophia laughed. He's complaining. It's okay. Let him study. It's for his own good. Molly only sat with them for 10 minutes. I'll go and lie down. I'm still a little weak. I have ideas, of course. My daughter. Peter smiled. It's so unusual, even unusual, to hear my daughter called daughter. Sophia smiled, but she's really like a daughter to me. You know, sometimes I think she's a lot like Kelly, just as gentle, kind. Peter frowned. Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Sophia looked up. Yes, I'm listening very carefully. Peter took out a small notebook. So here's what I found out. Maria Queen lives in a small town. By the way, your late husband used to live there. I don't get it. What does that have to do with Max? Take your time, Sophia. So this girl lives with her mom. The mom's a couple years younger than you. But that's not what's important. I went to that town, walked around, saw the people, talked to them, and I found out one very interesting detail. This woman gave birth to her daughter while she was married. Everything seemed to be right, but her husband could not have children because he was, crippled after some accident. Everyone told me that the woman was dating someone rich and handsome. He invited her to come with him, but she refused and stayed with her husband. As you can imagine, in such small towns, everyone knows everything about everyone, and even more like to discuss, especially if you are properly interested in it. Of course, I managed to get interested, and it turns out by all accounts that I dated Maria's mother. It was your husband in those days. He was not yet your husband. He probably didn't even know you because it was only after he broke up with that woman that he moved here. I'm not really sure what the bracelet and everything else has to do with it. I haven't had a lot of time. But I promise you, I will definitely find out. Sophia silently stood up and left the room. She came back and put a few bundles of money in front of her. This is for your expenses. Something tells me you're on the right track. As soon as we find out about Dawn, that is, how he got to that girl, that's how we'll find out. Peter, please don't tell my son anything. I don't know why, but I don't think he'd be happy if Kelly was found. And he'll say I'm crazy because Kelly is presumed dead. And I'm the only one who can't believe it. Peter nodded and worried. As long as the investigation lasts you, and I will never know anything. I understand that. I'll take money, but not much, just enough for a return ticket. Sophia shook her head negatively. No, take the money for all expenses. She also went upstairs, brought the keys. These are the keys to her husband's car. It's sitting in the garage doing nothing. They take it in for a checkup every 6 months, and that's it. I'll call the garage and have them give it to you. Peter got behind the wheels. Thank you very much. It's a very long commute on buses and trains. You know, you don't assure yourself very much that Kelly will be found. You realize you could be disappointed. Sophia looked at him quickly. I'm sure she's alive. Do whatever you want with me. Greg arrived a little early, as promised, and hugged his wife. Why did the appendicitis happen to you? Well, I really missed you. She even laughed. You say that like there's only one appendicitis in our town in 3 years. And I have it. No, of course not. Somebody's gonna feed me. I even put my finger to my lips. Don't yell. So Mom must be feeling sick. She's locked herself in her room for hours without coming out. Greg raised his eyebrows at his mother. It wasn't like that. Her beloved Molly was out of the hospital, and her mother wasn't flocking around her like a hen. Greg knocked softly on the door. Mom, can I come in? Yes, son, come in. He entered the room and frowned. Mom, you again. Around Sophia were spread pictures of Kelly. She looked at her son with tearful eyes. I don't understand why you are so uncomfortable with the memory of Kelly. She's your sister. Greg tried to soften his expression. Mom, you misunderstand me. I don't want you to be so upset. Why? Kelly, no, and nothing can bring her back. After all these years, you have to get over it. No, I'm never gonna get over it, and you know it. And lately I've been getting this feeling like we're gonna find her soon. Greg almost cried, God forbid, but he held back. He'd been getting too many bad vibes lately too. And one of them is that if someone brings up Cleopatra's firm again, they're bound to find out that the firm was created by him. And it was run by Leo, his father, and the same man who had once been his mother's husband. Greg didn't want to hurt his mother, but she was too much of a nuisance. There was no way to go into the open, and waiting until the firm was legally in his possession wasn't something he wanted to do either. He wanted to become its sole owner as soon as possible and make decisions on his own, and finally fire that nasty Kevin. Mom, let's go to dinner. Molly's setting the table. How is Molly supposed to rest? Oh, that dissipated. Mother took a quick step towards the kitchen. Greg grabbed one picture of his sister and hissed, "What is it that you still give me peace of mind? I hope you died a long time ago." He threw the photo back and followed Sophia. Peter showed up a week later. He was just jammed with news. Really, he didn't know how he should handle the situation now. What he had learned could not leave life the same. No one's life, not Sophia's, not Greg's, and certainly not his daughter's. Peter called Sophia. "We need to meet. I have a lot of news." The woman was just at work, picked up the phone to warn her son that she was going to be away. But then she changed her mind and dialed Kevin's number. "Kevin, I need to leave, but I want no one to know that I am not at the firm." Kevin always understood her from the first word, especially Greg. "Okay, I hear you. Sophia, I need help. And to be honest, I don't know yet. I'll call you. One more thing. I keep wondering about that Cleopatra firm. Can't you find out more about it?" "And I will. Especially since it's been bugging me too." Sophia sank into a chair in front of Peter. "I ordered you some tea." "Yes, thank you for recognizing me." "Well, I guess I'll start with the main thing. Is your daughter alive?" "Well, at least she was alive when everyone thought she was dead." Sophia went pale, clutched her chest. "Please calm down. It's not that simple. We're going to have a hard and long conversation." The woman listened attentively to everything Peter was telling her, every now and then she shook her head. "No, it just can't be." Maybe Sophia, the girl, was so scared that she didn't dare to ask for help from anyone she knew. "Do you understand?" Did she not? "Yes. You know, Kelly told me a few times about Greg, but I always thought it was just a figment of her imagination. Because everything seems so meaningful when you're a teenager. But why did she go there in the first place? That's another news flash for you. The fact is that Helen was actually dating, and Max, after they broke up, had a daughter, Maria, whom you saw in the hospital. It's not hard to guess if her husband was up to no good. And Max, well, by all accounts, it's Max's daughter that he never found out about. Maybe that was the reason the girls had become such good friends that Kelly had given her her bracelet." Sophia looked up at Peter. "I don't understand. It's been so many years. Why hasn't Kelly come back?" "There are several reasons. The most important one, which she told Helen, is that she blames herself for her father's death, feels guilty in front of you, in front of the whole world. Either she's punishing herself, or she really feels that guilty in front of you. Second, are you sure that if Kelly comes back, she'll be safe? I mean, just hearing that conversation saved her life. No, that's just not possible. Greg, he couldn't. Sophia, I hate to say this, but I'm going to have to tell my daughter. She needs to know who's around her. After all, it's dangerous. No, he can't be a monster. He's my son." At that moment, the phone rang in Sophia's pocket. She picked it up. "Kevin, it's urgent. I'm a little busy. I won't take up much of your time. I want to tell you that Cleopatra's manager is very familiar to you. That's Greg, Leo's father. Yes, in fact, Greg gave him the firm. But why? If you stop thinking of Greg only as a son, you'll understand." Kevin passed out, and Sophia looked up at Peter. The man shivered involuntarily. How much had the woman's look changed? Now before him sat a lady with a steely gaze and a very heavy expression. "Peter, I'm going to need some more of your help so you don't have to worry. I'm sending Molly to the sea tonight. I'll tell her she needs to recuperate. She'll listen to me." "Yes, thank you. I'll do what I can." She leaned toward him and began to speak. "Sophia, but I don't want to go anywhere without Greg. You don't even understand. Greg needs a healthy wife. Your hemoglobin is low. You need to get some rest. He's so busy now anyway, you won't even see him." Greg, who at first grudgingly accepted his mother's words, sighed. "Yes, Mom is right. Lately she's just been swamping me with work. Nothing will happen to us in a week. Go get some rest and come back soon." Of course, he didn't like that his mother didn't offer him a vacation, but she's been in a mood lately. So it's best to keep quiet and keep working to make sure everyone finally forgets this Cleopatra thing. Father is also good. As soon as he realized that the smell of fried, just withdrew money from where he could and got away. And now he's got to deal with it. Mother nodded her head and went to her room. Didn't even kiss him. The next day, after Molly left and he went back to work, he got a call from Sophia. "Gotcha. I have to go away for a few days. I'll call you." "Mom," but there's a short ringtone. Then a text for Kevin in charge. Oh, how much he wanted to tell her now. But Mom didn't pick up the phone again. She was on her way with Peter to where her daughter was supposedly. "Jenna, are you late again?" Kelly inwardly howled. What the hell was wrong with this? Everything's been a mess since this morning. The faucet leaked this morning. Obviously, you can't buy a new one at 7 o'clock hours. But to leave it like that means putting the neighbors at risk. We had to wait for the plumber, who is never in a hurry. "Miranda, honestly, it's not my fault." The woman folded her arms across her chest and looked at her. "Well, I'm listening to you. Tell us another incident that somehow only happens to you." It wasn't true. Everyone in the office was always late, but it was only Kelly who was getting smacked around. Now the girl realized that she couldn't work in such conditions anyway. "And you know what, Miranda, I'm not going to tell you anything and prove it, because it's all useless." The boss's eyebrows went up. "How do you talk? What do you think you're doing? What are you? An errand boy, or rather an errand girl? You keep your mouth shut, or you'll be out of here in no time. And I'd be happy to fly you out. I'm just wondering what the wording will be. You understand that I have nothing to lose now, and I will go to our chief to tell him how the department works, which spoils the firm all the indicators. And I'll even explain why it's happening." Miranda gasped with indignation, not for the first time. This girl is insinuating to her that she is failing in her duties. "You're at the UN, and you won't get anything from me without a paycheck." Kelly thought wistfully that there was no way to pay the rent. On what grounds do you not give an employee the money he has earned? You have to pay him back within 24 hours. Miranda stared in amazement at the woman who approached them, frozen, afraid to turn around. Tears streamed from her eyes. She wanted to run away, but realized that such coincidences do not happen. Her mother had found her. Everything else seemed to fade into a fog. She didn't hear Miranda answering. She slowly turned to where her mom was standing. "Mommy." Kelly literally fell into Sophia's arms. She was holding on with all her might. "My silly girl, why didn't you tell me everything? Why didn't you tell me? If I hadn't found you." Gray had to leave after talking to his mother. He listened in silence with his head bowed. Only once he said, "You're ready to put me in jail for her, just like you always do. You are wrong. I will not put you in jail, but only because you are my son. And I give you the opportunity to start a new life. And I'm even gonna help you do it. But you don't get to decide how or who should live. You're not God." Molly said she's going with her husband. He needed someone close, and she was the closest thing he had. Peter was not very happy with this decision, but accepted his daughter's choice. Sophia met Helen, and after a short time they became real friends, and Kelly and Maria studied hard to run the company. A year after all the events, Kelly and Maria came home smiling mysteriously. "Moms, we have news for you." The women who were drinking tea looked at each other. Sounds terrifying. Helen had moved closer to them at Sophia's insistence. Kelly laughed and nudged Masha in the side. "Come on, you're better at this." Maria drew in a breath and said, "Today we have guests. We decided to introduce you to our guys to get their approval, so to speak. Anyway, Kelly and I are getting married." The girls expected any kind of reaction, but not this. First air was thrown by Maria's mother, followed by Kelly's mother. A second later, the women were laughing. Maria and Kelly looked at them resentfully. "What did we say that was so funny?" Sophia waved her hands. "Nothing, girls, nothing really. It's just that we were going to announce the same thing to you today, which is the same thing. Kelly, not understanding, stared at her mother. The women glanced over again. Well, we were going to introduce someone to you today, too. Maria asked cautiously, but you're not getting married. Helen nodded her head, and she was. Kelly asked stupidly, really, and to whom? Sophia said I was marrying Kevin and Helen was marrying Peter. The girls looked at each other and suddenly laughed and rushed to hug their mothers. But that's great. That's just great. We'll all be married and happy. And let's have 4 weddings in one day. Sophia waved. Oh, you'll think of something. How's that? You're going to the store on the same day. Looks like we're going to have to set the table a lot more seriously today than we thought. Greg didn't make it to the wedding, but he called to say congratulations. Molly couldn't come because she was expecting a baby. All the men supported the girls' idea, and almost the whole town came out to watch when a real cortege of wedding cars marched down the street. No one here remembered such a thing, that 2 mothers and 2 daughters got married on the same day.
8 hours and 42 minutes. Another 18 minutes and you can run home? The night shift will be here. Miranda better not be half an hour late like last time. 2 days ago, Lisa won't wait for the bus, and there's no money for a cab. Or rather, there is, but she can't afford to spend a penny extra. September is coming up. Ethan will go to school, and not even half of the supplies have been bought yet. If Miranda is late again, she'll have to walk 10 kilometers, and we have to get to the supermarket before midnight. You'll never get home, that's the trouble. Ethan, of course, is a good boy, knows already when Lisa is not home, opens the doors. No one is allowed and no noise is allowed. He early learned to read Smart Child, and now faithfully, quietly, sits on his couch with a book. Or maybe he draws or plays some Snake on his old cell phone. Lisa was going to buy a new cell phone for her nephew as a present for his first Knowledge Day. Ethan's TV is now afraid it'll be enlarged by a movie. The neighbors will hear and report that the aunt is not watching the baby. This has already happened in their little family. The neighbor from the apartment across the street, a nasty aunt with a narrow face, looking like a mouse, see, apparently, purposely watching them, and then signals, simply put, me. We don't need another visit from the child welfare authorities. Last time, White Kelly, a plain-voiced official, already told her you're under our thumb. We remember your family. We know you all as prisoners. What, Mom? Did you, Lisa, have negligence? What about Daddy? And I'm not even talking about your precious sister. I don't know who let you, Lisa, give up your baby. Michael, you know. You can't crush it with your finger. I'll make sure Ethan is taken away from you and returned to an orphanage. They look after the kids there properly. They're clean. They don't starve. They don't sit alone at night. Kelly's been afraid of her since she was a kid. The guardianship specialist used to be the head teacher at her school. She was disliked and was known as the nightstand. She looked like a cube because she was overweight and had a peculiar figure. The head teacher quietly knew exactly how to treat children, although she had no offspring of her own and no husband. Kelly devoted all her free time to work. Actually, she wasn't just defending the principal. She also taught art and labor classes. That was the name of the subjects, technology, and woe. To those unfortunate people who did not know how to handle a sewing machine. Tombachka considered this skill essential to family life. That's what she used to say. No one so lazy, her didn't know how to Fleming, will ever marry her. I explained 100 times how to change threads in the machine, but our Fleming must have been dreaming of boys. You shouldn't be dreaming, dumbass. Fleming. That's her, Lisa. That was her last name back then. There was no one to teach her to sew. Her classmates' mothers or grandmothers could do it. There was no sewing class at school for a year and a half. They said Kelly was sick. There was no one to replace her. And when she got well, the first thing she said was that everyone had to learn to use a sewing machine by themselves for a year. And who didn't take a year to do that? Fleming, for example, is lazy. They belong in a school for retarded children, and then that they'll teach you how to sew mittens in prison. Nobody knew where the nightstand got her knowledge of life behind barbed wire. The children didn't dare to ask her about it. No one wanted to draw fire on themselves. It was much more interesting to watch her bullying Fleming. It could have lasted a whole lesson. Great entertainment. On the second lesson at home, the nightstand quickly read out another passage from the textbook and finally let the students get down to business. And the real circus began. Fleming, you should at least wash your hands. I'm afraid of getting the machine dirty. I washed them before class. Lisa excused herself. She came rushing toward her. Moving with surprising speed for an obese lady, she grabbed her hand, showing the Lisa class engaged in laughter on the palm of her hand. If you girls want to get married, never bite your nails like General Fleming does. Ugh, that's gross! All your fingers in their ink. Better not go near her. She's sure to charge you with something nasty. Look at her. Her dresses are all crumpled up, and she's all messed up. What did you girls have for breakfast in the dining room today? Ah, the Fleming years. We have a live menu. Anyone who looks at it knows what they're feeding the school children. And not just today, but yesterday and a week ago. She hasn't washed this dress in years. Lisa, to the delight of the students, started to cry. Who does she think she's so clumsy? Her mom is a model of beauty and style. And why does she lie about Lisa's dress being dirty? Mom makes sure her school uniform is clean every morning. Who is to blame that on the way to school, especially on those days when the schedule of labor lessons? Lisa constantly something happens to her. Then she gets a kitten on the street sick, and she returns home with her so that the little animal does not freeze in the street. Then the car squeams her up. Then the boys will launch that stupid, neither tasty summer look-alike dishwashing sponge at her for breakfast. The boys, too, are aware of how the nightstand mocks Lisa and are very sorry that their labor lessons are in a different classroom. The torture almost always ends the same way. A D for you, Fleming? At the end of each quarter, the nightstand's last phrase changed slightly. 3 makes 2 in your mind. As they say, once again our ruler got lucky. If we, teachers, were not scolded for bad marks, such stupid, long ago would have left our Fleming for a second year, and no one would have paid attention to her good marks in other subjects. What good are your A's in math and Russian Fleming if you can't sew your husband's underwear? After these words, everyone but Lisa laughed. In class, she was nicknamed Pantaloons. That's how she was addressed for the last 11 years. Pantaloons to write off. Or even pantaloons? Panties for her beloved sewed once, already in the 9th grade, when the hated labor lessons were left behind. On March 8th, the guys prepared a surprise for the girls. In the morning, their classmates had flowers on their desks. Even the ugly, cheerful fat girl's Molly, who always smelled unpleasant even in her silly and round face, and Adriana, who stayed on the second year 3 times in different classes. And now, the teachers had set themselves the goal of getting rid of her, and were trying their best to pull double grades in all subjects. It was not easy to do it. Adriana could read and write with difficulty, and she could not count even with the help of a calculator. In general, everyone except Lisa had jokers prepared for her. Perhaps not without the help of the girls. A special gift of huge, polka-dotted men's underpants. You can't learn Fleming because you're lazy and stupid. But we're your friends. We've done everything for you, announced Sebastian, the class's chief pariah. Nasty, pimply-faced sycophant with lazy lips. No thanks. You can look for your knickers. You've already got underpants for him. You'll need a lot of time, though. You're not much of a housewife, and you're not very pretty. But don't worry, by the time you retire, some blind man will embarrass you. Then the class erupted in laughter. It must have been really funny. The family happiness of the man who was given a piece of cloth as a gift to Lyra must have had volumes like a hippopotamus. Satisfied with the effect, Sebastian smiled, looking at his classmates, who liked to kick his briefcase at recess or discreetly spit on a couple's back. Laughing meant they approved. Maybe this time they wouldn't kick him on the way home and laugh at the brand new pink phone his mother had bought him. Mom doesn't know anything about normal things. Why did she have to get that awful accessory? But that's okay. Now the class will finally have a new object of ridicule. Who better than Sebastian to know all about bowling? He himself had taken over after his predecessor, Ron, moved to another city. What Sebastian didn't know was that his moment of fame would remain just a blink of an eye. The very next day, his backpack would be being used to play soccer at recess. And the phone that had brought him so many unpleasant minutes would accidentally drown in the toilet. But right now, he was enjoying the attention, glancing around to make sure he was being watched by Stephen, the recognized student leader. Sebastian took a mouthful of saliva and spat it all over Lisa's dress. Valley Pantaloons home, making a habit of washing rags for her future spouse. Lisa ran out of the classroom to avoid tearing up in front of everyone. Not enough to please those creeps with a tantrum yet. That day, she didn't show up at classes anymore, and after the party, she demanded her mother to transfer her to another school, even at the end of the world. She had asked her mother to do this before, but in vain. This was the school where her mother had once studied. That's where Lisa Cathy's little sister was going in the fall. Great school, the best in town. Mom shrugged. Didn't you ever wonder? Maybe you're the problem. You can't have the whole class picking on one student for nothing if they haven't done anything wrong. My former classmates and I are still friends. Except for Lisa, he was always whining and complaining. We ended up boycotting him to reconsider his behavior. Daughter and people will reach out to you. But they call me difficult and throw my bag down the toilet. Have you ever scolded me for that yourself? Lisa couldn't take it anymore. All the girls got flowers for Women's Day, and I got horrible and different knickers, and they laughed at me. Then I guess I'll have to watch myself better. That's it. Mom shrugged, covering one cigarette with another. She worked as an editor at a large publishing house and smoked all the time, explaining that it was a nervous job. You really do wear things very neatly. How do other people manage not to get dirty? Try and you can do it. You're a girl, not a pipe cleaner. Maybe the guys really don't want to hang out with you. You're always carrying yourself around with some stray animal. No wonder your clothes get dirty. The problem was solved, oddly enough, by the main perpetrator of the bullying, the nightstand. Her favorite part of her job was visiting students' families. Other teachers weren't too fond of visiting the apartments of truant students, especially since they They had to do it in the evening after work to be sure to catch the parents at home. But Kelly was first of all single, and secondly, curious. Besides, she was well aware that a visiting teacher is always treated to tea, served with a brissamole. Best candies and sweets. Do not want to hit in the dirt face, respect. Nightstand did not immediately find the right house by the same peers and the same neighborhood.
And it's still chilly outside. It's early March. Spring is only on the calendar. I wonder what they'll feed her with. Fleming. They'd better put us on. Caviar and cheese sandwiches, smoked sausage. She was fed with these inaccessible viands in the house of Romanov, the director of the Combine, whose son often arranged various tricky ones. Just in case, the head teacher resigned herself to writing in a special notebook.
So, Fleming Lisa, Mother Betty, editor-in-chief of a publishing house. Father Jack, design engineer. At the very factory Romanoff runs, they're probably not poor. The fat lady smiled, anticipating a pleasant evening, and looked at the clock, 8 o'clock.
It was time for dinner. Great. So, tonight we don't have to cook anything. Savings again. You save money, you make money. Yeah, new construction. So they just bought the place. Kelly pushed the front door open with determination, puffing. Tension went up to the third floor. The elevator wasn't working for some reason. There was a sign on the door that said renovation. Here's apartment 51. Nightstand pressed the call button with determination and heard Zalev rack the shelves. That was the only thing missing. Fleming's dog is a source of infection. If she, an honored educator, had been given a free hand, she would have eliminated all those white dung in the liquidation. She's got Fleming's hat on. Fleming was in no hurry to open the door, but the door of the apartment opposite cautiously ajar. It is impossible to rest after work, as loudly as possible, said the neighbor, a dyed blonde with a narrow face. There are guests again. That nasty dog is yelling again. I'll call the police. Do they often have guests? She asked, feeling that she had found an ally. Yes, all the time, Bohemians. What can you take from them? There is no control over them. Another participant entered the conversation, also a tenant of the apartment across the street. Apparently, the blonde's husband. Got it, Kelly. My name is David, a heavy-set, mustachioed citizen named David. I'm a writer of historical novels. The writer looked nothing like himself. Representing the representatives of this creative profession was Taft. Taft was a formidable, unkempt man with a red mustache, dressed in camouflage uniform. The historian wore a blue paratrooper beret on his head. Apparently, he had just come from work, the head teacher realized. And in turn, she also introduced herself as Kelly, the deputy headmistress. They began. Urka did something wrong, gloatingly suggested the blonde. Exactly so. The nightstand readily confirmed and, unable to resist, clarified. Someone like Lisa Fleming belongs not in the 10th grade, but in a vocational school. I don't know how her parents managed to persuade her to keep her in the school. The door to Fleming's apartment suddenly opened, and a slender lady with a short haircut appeared on the threshold. In her hands, she was smoking a cigarette. "What can I do for you?" asked the landlady, and immediately, without transition, shouted somewhere into the depths of the corridor. "We have visitors in the prohibition room." The neighbors evaporated, shouted one last time that something malicious smokers, who were about to burn down the house. I had to go to the nightstand to take care of everyone. "Betty, I'm the vice principal. How dare you smoke? Do you have kids?" Fleming, the eldest, looked at the nightstand. "Don't you think it's my business? Smoking in your own apartment or raising rabbits?" "Is your daughter not attending class? May I ask why?" Kelly replied, and went on the offensive. "May I come in?" "I will," Fleming suddenly agreed. "You're yelling at the whole entryway?" Not a bit of the subservience to which the nightstand was accustomed. Hopes of a delicious, hearty dinner were fading. The conversation took place in the kitchen to the accompaniment of dog barking. The head teacher's tea was never offered. Hearing both Kelly's opinion about her mental abilities and the slovenliness of her eldest daughter, Betty did not even change in her face. She lit another cigarette, let out the smoke, guests right in her face, and calmly said, "Get out. We'll pick up the paperwork from your almshouse tomorrow, but it's the end of the year. Your Lisa will not get into any school." To Lepetov's nightstand, "Who told you my daughter would go to a school?" "My husband and I will find a more decent school," Fleming pointed out, and said loudly, "Lisa, our visitor is just leaving. Help her find her way out." She added, turning to the nightstand, "What an unpleasant acquaintance. It's a good thing we won't be seeing you again. Goodbye. As soon as the door slammed shut, the teacher started ringing the next doorbell. David opened it immediately. He must have been spying, the nightstand realized. Kelly did not yet know why she would need this acquaintance, but she had a feeling she would need them. The new school was found the very next day. It took almost an hour to get there, but no one there knew Lisa was stupid and ugly. She made friends. Kelly was soon asked to quit. She suspected it wasn't bearable. Fleming complained to the Department of Education. This was, by and large, predictable. What was offensive was another. Neither the plant director Romanov nor his wife stood up for the educator. Ungrateful people. The nightstand found a new job quickly. There was a vacancy. See in the guardianship department. The pay there was less than in the school, but this type of activity turned out to be much more interesting than the previous one. The former deputy director for educational work got real power. How mothers cried when their children were going to be taken away from them on the advice of others. There was always an excuse. No stock of cereals, no soup. The child doesn't study well. It was the parents' fault. It was not always possible to bring the case to the end. Sometimes the court sided with the family for some reason, but the nightstand knew how to finish the victim. Lisa glanced at her wristwatch. It was a dainty gold piece Michael had given her on their first wedding anniversary. They'd been 28 at the time. They were in love with each other. Lisa felt like they would always be. Look what I got for you, old lady.
No sooner had Lisa opened the door than he picked her up in his arms and spun her around. Then he handed her a weighty box. Gold without diamonds, but with your favorite garnets. You'll be checking what time I'm in and blowing my brains out.
Oh, Simpson! Lisa rejoiced. How cool you are! At that moment, the phone rang. Lisa glanced at the screen. Mom probably wanted to wish her eldest daughter a happy anniversary. Hi, she answered excitedly and heard sobs in the receiver. What's wrong? Kathy is pregnant, cried the mother. The term is already big, the 5th month. She dropped out of school. I can't manage on my own. Lisa Kathy's father had died by then, and her mother had retired. Relax, I'll be right there, Lisa replied, and went to get dressed. Wait. Michael was indignant. It's our anniversary. I booked a table at the restaurant a month in advance. Does your mother even have a conscience? She didn't have to ruin our party. It's already happened. Let's stop by their place for a little while and go to the restaurant. Lisa knew very well how hard it was for her to get a reservation at the most popular place in town. She made an effort and smiled affectionately at her husband. That's where she, the doctor, got my surprise for you. It didn't turn out at all as she had planned. Instead of greetings and congratulations, the mother declared Ogienko from the threshold. Why did you bring it? This is our family business. I, Betty, am in a way a member of the family too, the one cheesed. That's the most original wedding anniversary greeting I've heard to date. The mother-in-law was angry with tears. You purposely decided to remind me that Kathy has no husband? I will wait in the car without delay and please. We are late for the restaurant, said Michael Lisa, and slammed the door. You dare to go to restaurants when there is unhappiness in the family? The mother lashed out at Lisa. Is having a baby a disaster? Lisa asked slowly. I thought you'd be happy to hear my news. Michael and I are expecting a baby. That's all we need, the mother exclaimed and theatrically clutched her heart. How far along are you? 10 weeks. Thank God. There's still time to get rid of the baby, said the mother. One dope didn't work. At least you won't be crazy. Why do you need a burden? You'll have a nephew soon enough. You'll be tired of dealing with it. Lisa was speechless at first, then tried to explain to her mother that she was wrong. It didn't work very well. Mom, I'm a grown woman. I've decided to have a baby. What's so terrible about that? Yes. And who's going to help us? My pension alone won't support the three of us. A child is expensive. Look, Mom, I think Kathy should have thought of that. Lisa couldn't take it anymore. Goodbye, everybody. Seeing his wife's crying face, Michael clenched his fists. Forget the road to this house. We won't let them ruin our party. Let's go to the restaurant. Lisa suddenly poked and grabbed her stomach. Michael, we probably won't be going to the restaurant tonight. I have to go to the hospital right away. We have to save our baby. That was the surprise I wanted to give you in a different setting. We couldn't save the pregnancy. Well, Michael was walking around like a cloud. He tried his best to dispel his wife's sad thoughts. Lisa, on the other hand, didn't even try to get out of the black pit of depression. She couldn't work. She just did the cleaning and cooking automatically. In 4.5 months, neither her mother nor her sister tried to contact her. Not a single word of support was said. Another call from the mother came in early February. My grandson was born, and you have a nephew. Trafoa, Kathy and the baby are being discharged the day after tomorrow. She'll be home for a month and then back to night school. Stop nodding. I need your help. Ironically, it was a little man named Kevin who helped Lisa recover. Michael, who not unreasonably believed his mother-in-law to be the perpetrator of the misfortune, was at first opposed to his wife spending almost all of her free time with her. But when he became convinced that his nephew's concerns were having a positive effect, he calmed down. Worry and raids were still caused by Kathy. She never finished school. The son, too, was not too interested in this brightly colored beauty. One day, Ethan was already 5 years old. She informed her mother that she had met her fate and was leaving for the capital. Why did you forget this one? I don't want to. Like you, Dad. All your life Torquetti at work from bell to bell, said Kathy. Just before I retire, they'll kick me in the ass and I'll have to beg. I've got to make a life with the man I've chosen, Betty asked. I'm not taking him to this shithole. Won't you miss the glass? Kathy stepped in. I've got a terrific story. Mom, she said, and folding her arms across her chest. You spent my whole life thinking I was bad, like everyone else, even though I came home late and didn't pay much attention to my studies. I didn't have a boyfriend. I was much more interested in playing with the feelings of my dumber classmates to make them all fail. Tears rushed from the girl's eyes. Kathy was back to that unfortunate night in Metz when the devil had pulled her to go to a new nightclub. We'll all be there, her friend Vanessa told her. Is it okay that we're all underage? Kathy asked. They won't ask for passports at the door. No passport or money will be needed. This place belongs to Benjamin's father, Vanessa smiled. Benjamin, promoted by his dad to a party of friends. Shall we go? Kathy readily agreed. The pocket money her mother gave her had not been enough for anything for a long time. And she didn't really want to work part-time in the evenings. The last year of school was coming up. She'd have to get ready for college. Were you fooling around with champagne for they'd eat? Nash, sadis! Shouted the club owner's son. To be honest, the booze was pretty bad. Kathy hasn't forgotten what bottles. Not so long ago, when Dad was alive and Mom was working, they used to stand at the bar at her parents' home house. And sometimes when the adults were away, Kathy and her girlfriends would sample the liquor Benjamin Fleming treated the guests with. Never would buy it. Cheap soda with alcohol. A basket. Taste it, it's so good. Echoing Vanessa's music, she had clearly consumed more than one glass of the cap. And Kathy made up her mind. Wow, it tastes pretty good. She was addicted. After a short while, the atmosphere in the club began to seem less gloomy. She was desperately dizzy, though. She should find a place and take a nap. She woke up to someone roughly tearing off her clothes. And the mountains. And me first. That bitch is gonna fuck with me. Kathy recognized the voice of Karpov's son, Ustenko, the short one. He should look in the mirror at himself first, and then he'll be hitting on decent girls. She struggled to blind her eyelids, going to tell her son everything she thought about him. But the situation was not in her favor. Someone's hand clamped over her mouth. Someone was holding her legs tight. Rapists. There were 5 or 6 of them, switching places. Guys, how can you do this? I'm not getting anything out of this, Sanek said, confused. Kathy threw up. Oh crap, I'll get all dirty. Outraged, one of the participants of the execution and painfully kicked the girl under the ribs. Don't worry, I lent you some clothes to walk home, said Benjamin. Okay guys, that's it. At Orjo 500, the staff has to go home, and they've got cleaning to do. Where's this going? Somebody asked. Put her on, we'll send her home in a cab. And if she's snitching on someone, let her take care of it, Smith said confidently. Besides, who's going to believe her if she's such a saint? Why did you come to the club, and in that? A short dress that barely covers her ass? Basically, she provoked us. At home, Kathy slipped into the shower unnoticed. I don't want Mom to find out what happened. She's bound to go to the school, report it to the police. Smith's right. No one's going to believe Kathy. We've got to get on with it. The girl didn't find out she was pregnant right away. In fact, she realized something unforeseen had happened. When her belly began to grow, and then her mother noticed, dragged her schoolgirl daughter to the doctor. It turned out that it was too late to have an abortion. Go to school, where studied at least 2 of her offenders. Kathy could not. When she finished her sad story, the girl looked her in the eye. It was your fault too, Mom, she said. You didn't care where I was, who I was with. You gave up on me a long time ago. I don't want a rapist. If you need to sign any papers for custody, do it soon. I'm the only one in this village who'll spend any extra time. If you need money, my man will help. I can't let him go. I want to live a normal life at last. When I told my husband I wanted to take Kevin out of my life, Michael flipped out. We actually lost our own child because of that boy. He's not going to live with us. I'm not ready to be a father to him. But Mom has health problems, Lisa tried to explain. And she's not the right age? Will the boy end up in an orphanage? That's not our problem. Lisa, your mom and your sister have been using you all your life, don't you understand? Let's just forget they exist. Let's take one normal vacation. Do you want me to buy you a puppy? Remember, you asked me to. Or a kitten of any breed, Maine Coon, bald, whatever? Michael hugged his wife, but she pulled away. Michael, I can't betray a child. He's used to having a family. I, too, am used to living in a family with a wife I love. That's what Lisa... I've put up with all the antics of your crazy relatives for a long time, but all patience comes to an end. I'm afraid you have to make a choice between a poor orphan who, by the way, has his own mother, and me. I love you very much, but I choose Kevin, Lisa said firmly. You could have at least given me the decency to say you'd think about it. Grumbled her husband. So we'll take Ethan? Lisa rejoiced. No, I've said it all. The day he shows up at this house, I'll pack my things and leave. I don't want to waste my time going to the authorities and taking a bunch of tests just to have someone else's baby. I want a child of my own, but for some reason you're afraid to even think about it. It's been 5 years, almost 6. We're not young people. Lisa, it's not going to work out for sure. I want an heir. And I honestly don't care if you or some other woman will be the mother of my son or daughter. Lisa realized she'd overreacted and stopped talking. She decided to collect the documents for the custody of the joystick by herself and see what happened. But it was impossible to do it. For each movement in this difficult case required the consent of her husband. And Michael was not going to change his position already. And Kathy long ago left with a new beau, leaving her son with his grandmother. And custody was still pending. The mother died suddenly. Yesterday, Lisa helped her take down the Christmas tree. Ah! She took Kevin to her place for the night, and this morning she got a call from a neighbor. She stopped by the food for salt. No one answered the phone. Sir. Nancy actually had keys to the apartment, but she didn't need them. When the woman wanted to knock, the door swung open, and with a gentle nudge. The neighbor came in and found Betty sitting in the chair by the TV, trying to feel her pulse, but she was already cold. Michael was helping Lisa with the funeral. Kathy refused to come, saying she was going to the Emirates with her lover. The plane tonight? Kathy with Ethan? Then what to do? I don't have the papers ready yet, Lisa shouted into the phone. I already told you, it's not my problem. In case you didn't hear me the first time, I repeat, don't want this baby and I don't want the apartment. I don't want my car. I don't want my inheritance. Leave me alone. I have no past. She dropped the call and disconnected the phone. Michael, who witnessed the conversation, told his wife harshly, "Don't expect my heart to melt. The boy will only stay here until the funeral. What happens afterward, do you know? It's either him or me." However, it didn't have to wait until the day of the funeral ceremony. The next day, the doorbell rang. Lisa opened the door, thinking it was one of Mom's co-workers coming to pay their respects. Kelly was there. She hadn't changed at all in the 20 years Lisa hadn't seen her. Fleming. What a meeting of carnivores. The fat woman smiled, pulling her ID out of her bag. I'm a child welfare representative. A child has been abandoned and is to be removed to a boarding school. You had enough time to finish the paperwork, but you didn't do it. We're bringing in witnesses, neighbors, Betty, and the police. A fluffy blue-eyed cat came running in from the kitchen, jumped on the couch, and started licking a handful. Pets in the house are unsanitary, Nightstand declared authoritatively. The cat should be put down. It's filthy, and it's giving her worms. What am I talking about? The kid's going to boarding school. At least let him say goodbye to his grandmother. Lisa flew in. The child has nothing to do with the funeral. What a family, huh? I heard it. The voice from the apartment without knocking came from David Taft. In the 8 years Lisa hadn't lived in the building, the neighbor had gained even more. But he never thought to change his image. He still wore the same unsterile camouflage and the occasional blue beret. "Get out!" shouted Lisa. "Everybody get out of here!" "My mom's dead." "But no, honey, I'm not going anywhere," grinned in. After sitting Taft, "I'm not that one. Besides, I am a freelance correspondent for the local newspaper." I think readers will be interested to read a report from the scene about the removal of a child from a dysfunctional family. How is it that the editor-in-chief of the publishing house raised a mother cuckoo? Great story! What kind of bastards are you? Lisa creed. And Taft, having thrown himself in his mother's favorite chair, commented on what was happening in his own way as he was recording on a pre-flood. Video recorder. The apartment, as we can see, has not been renovated for a long time. Too bad the video doesn't capture the awful smell of tobacco. The late Betty smoked a lot. These are the conditions in which dear viewers lived the unfortunate baby. Huh. Only tonight, for the first time, he will finally have a chance to sleep in a clean bed. But who knows how long it will take the boy to forget life in this so-called family as a terrible dream. When the policeman, the juvenile inspector, and the district police officer entered the apartment, Lisa's face was completely swollen with tears. She, clutching to herself the sobs of howling. Kevin Osipov voice begged, "Do not take away the baby. Please do not take away." "You see, colleagues, she is completely inadequate." Huh? In a calm, even tone, Tumbochka told the visitors. "You can't leave the baby with an aunt who is in such a state. She clearly needs psychiatric help. Frankly, she's been unstable since childhood. Lisa is a former student of mine. She didn't do very well in school, though. Why would she have a nephew? Can't she have kids of her own?" Lisa threw her fists at her in frustration. Unexpectedly nimble for her size and back from her, Kelly quickly said, "Ban the hitman, To leave, please. Though maybe that's unnecessary." Vaughn David is videotaping. At the screams of Kevin, who was being forcibly removed from his home, other neighbors came running. Some tried to protect Lisa. "What the hell are you doing? There's a family funeral tomorrow." Oh, Nancy was outraged. The same neighbor who found Ada dead. The child had been removed in accordance with the rules. The nightstand explained coldly. "He'll be found another family. We're the adopters. If, of course, he's normal. I personally get the impression that he should be committed to a mental hospital." Mother's funeral was a blur. The next morning, Lisa said, "Michael, you're not changing positions?" "Then I'm afraid I'm going to have to do something. I'm filing for divorce. Michael, I hope you'll agree to dissolve our marriage at the registry office." "Would that be quicker?" "Yes, please," shouted the husband and disappeared into his bathroom. "I'll pack my things today, no need. My parents and I will return to my parents' apartment, so I'll pack," I answered Lisa. How did she manage after 2 months to pick up a razor-thin, naked, unlikable nephew from the orphanage? Separate story. The parents' acquaintances helped, and many of them saw the monstrous scene posted on the Sorsolon to the social network and cried against the wishes of the homegrown paparazzi. People felt sorry for the aunt and nephew. Many wondered if Taft had the Horo's permission to videotape. This is some publicly important material. "There is no need for any consent," answered All David. He eventually removed the video from the social network after he was summoned to the police at the request of outraged participants of the internet discussion and threatened with a fine. Taft was not afraid of liability, but the prospect of losing his money gave him a nervous tic. After some thought, he decided that the publication had already achieved its goal. Now he had to pay $5,000 to the state for some crazy family. But he and his wife, the lady who looked like a mouse, did not stop making trouble. It was his efforts that the nightstand regularly received denunciations about a child left unattended. Having brought Kevin home, Lisa returned to her job, but soon found out that she was not very welcome there. The baby was often sick, and employees who spend a lot of time on sick leave are not welcome anywhere. So she had to quit. It's a good thing there was this 24-hour kiosk. Lisa's painful memories were interrupted by Miranda's phone call. Finally, "Lisa, I have company. My sister flew in." She shouted happily into the phone. "I'm already drunk. I'm not coming tonight. Maybe tomorrow night." "Miranda, are you crazy?" "I have a child at home alone," Lisa resented. "Find someone who will take your place." "No way," answered Miranda. "Our colleague went to the country yesterday, and her phone was disconnected." Think of something. Lisa would have stayed another 24 hours without a boyfriend, but she had no choice. She picked up the phone again and found the number of the shopkeeper on the list. "Rustam, I can't stay another 24 hours. I have a child. I think alone. Find me a replacement." "Is Miranda collapsing again?" the businessman inquired. "It's a pity. She's a good girl. It's also a pity that there's no one to replace her. If you wait until morning at least, I'll send someone." "I'm going to drop everything and leave," Lisa screamed. "All the time?" "Miranda is late. Of course you can leave, my dear," said the stall owner in a sly voice. "But please note that in this case, I will keep your salary for the month." "I agree." Lisa was speechless at such insolence. "I'll stay till morning, but I'll have to leave. If you take anything out of my paycheck for that, I'll be damned." She hung up and dialed another number. "Nancy, honey, help me out one last time. Do you have a key to our apartment? You know I don't go out. They won't let me leave work till morning, and Taft's just waiting for Rick to rat me out. Take Kevin to your place for the night. Just try to keep it quiet. Our spies aren't dormant." The elderly neighbor gasped and promised to call Lisa back to report on how the operation to rescue the child from the locked apartment and move Kevin to the floor above had gone. "We made it," Nancy reported a few minutes later, and Lisa breathed a sigh of relief. 6, as she'd planned, she couldn't leave, yawning desperately. Rustum didn't show up until 9:30. Lisa tossed him the keys and ran for the bus. The way lay through the park. The place was deserted now in the early morning, with only a few dog walkers strolling with their pets. Ice cream vendors were preparing to sell their not-so-demanding merchandise at the end of a chilly August. "Wait, honey, what's your hurry?" Lisa heard an elderly voice for 3 minutes. "I'm late without turning around," she shouted back. Whispered, "Nothing will happen to the baby. He's still asleep. You come early. Extra eyes will see you. You'll be blown away." Lisa stopped in amazement. How did the owner of the voice know what she was thinking? "I know a lot of things," she answered. And Lisa finally turned around. On the barrier sat a gypsy woman in a tattered, colorful skirt and a stretched old sweater. There are many of them in provincial towns. On her head, she wore a brightly colored, but now rather shabby shawl. On the dark, almost brown image, deep wrinkles with a huge nose face shone piercingly black eyes. "I haven't any money," Lisa said decisively. "You're the one who doesn't have money for a cab because you're the one packing the kid for school she a spoonful of soup. Poor old thing. Grandma Cindy has $10 to spare." At the cafe, yesterday's pumpkin soup at a discount. "How much do I want for an old woman?" mumbled the gypsy. Lisa, without wanting to, took a step towards the fortune teller. "I'll make this soup worth it," the gypsy promised. "I'll draw the cards, and they don't lie. The next bus is in an hour. You wouldn't have gotten far on this one anyway." The situation was completely absurd. Lisa took her purse out of her bag, took out some bills, and handed them to the old woman. "You don't have to work anything off. Buy yourself something to eat and I'll go." "Didn't Grandma Cindy tell you the truth?" The old woman grinned. "A quarter of an hour won't kill you. Just listen to what I say and you'll know good news." "Well, that depends on who's hearing it." "It's good news for you, but for some people it'll have to be," Lisa said sadly. She glanced at her watch. That's right, she missed the bus. Okay, she'll listen to what this strange Onishchenko has to say, as the fortune teller slowly spoke, laying out the tattered cards on the newspaper. "There's no long road ahead of you this year. You already have countless riches and the most expensive things. You have made the right choice, and for this you will get a double reward. Soon you'll forget how you lived in want. No matter how hard the King of Spades tries to hurt you, he won't succeed. He'll go to his black coffin. Worms, the king suffers. He's already punished for his stubbornness. Expect a visit one of these days. The guardian fears forgiveness. You'll have to beg. The Queen of Spades is a foolish, poor woman. You'll have many children. You shouldn't worry. Your son in heaven has asked for you. Lisa got up abruptly. That's it, I've had enough. What's this all about? And the king is a mean man in years. A military man who appears to be a rogue himself. He'll get what's coming to him. He does too much bad things to people. Queen of Spades. You're petty, and you know it. She's done you a lot of harm. It's all because of her unsettled fate. Yeah, from natural stupidity. Thatcher is the new king, the one who gave you that watch. He's bitterly regretting your breakup. Michael, is it? Lisa grinned bitterly. Stop talking nonsense. He found someone else a long time ago. Intelligence reports. As soon as he found her, he broke up with her. A young man. How can he do without women, huh? Or did you think he has to wait for you forever? He's waiting. He doesn't know how to come back. If you looked around, you'd notice he's at your house every day. That's enough, sweetheart. I've told you enough. You'll remember Grandma Cindy in a year. Lisa shook her head as if she were shaking off of an obsession. What was this mystery? No gypsy woman was already on the path, only the first yellows. A leaf fell from a maple tree onto an empty bench. She wandered to the bus. Before she was born, I guess. That's why she sees all sorts of nonsense. Excited people crowded at the bus stop. Imagine how good it was that I missed the previous bus. A young woman in a green raincoat was talking excitedly. I came home. I thought I forgot to turn off the iron. And then this happened. Several passengers dead, some injured. Some bald guy in a plaid shirt was reading the news on his phone. Look, and the pictures are already on social media. That was fast. The bus was only a couple miles away, and a truck hit it. Head on? Did somebody ask you that? No. A truck rear-ended our bus, the uncle explained. Lisa smelled a case. She always chose the introvert's seat. That's what she and Michael had once nicknamed the seat at the back of the bus. She hadn't missed the previous bus. Ethan wouldn't have waited for her. The phone in her pocket rang. You're alive! A neighbor shouted into the receiver. It's already on the news about the accident with your bus. Don't worry, Nancy. I missed that bus. I'll be right there, Lisa replied, as calmly as possible. And she sank down on the bench. Her legs wouldn't hold her. A few minutes later, a new bus pulled up. The passengers silently sat down and went about their business. Nancy and Ethan were waiting for Lisa at home with the tea and cakes. No sooner had she crossed the threshold of her neighbor's apartment than they both rushed over to hug her. Breakfast. Ethan went for a walk in the yard. The women stayed in the kitchen. Can you imagine, Nancy? This happened to me today. Lisa began her story. The old woman listened attentively without interrupting. When Lisa had finished speaking, the neighbor said, And that's right, it's mystical. I didn't want to tell you. But the other day, I did see a man outside your house. I even asked him if he was coming to see you. And he was embarrassed and said he was just passing by. Maybe he was into the neighborhood on business, Lisa said. No, he's been in the neighborhood before, just randomly running errands and sitting in the courtyard. Anyway, he has his own life. A new girlfriend, Lisa said confidently. Would you find out? Nancy advised. It's obvious that your feelings haven't cooled down yet, and your husband is obviously interested in you. He offered me a choice between him and my nephew, Lisa reminded me. Do you know who I chose? We all do stupid things. Maybe you should forgive him. I'm not going to make inquiries, Lisa said. He'd have to show up. And he did show up. It was 2 days after Lisa had to work late. Michael came with a huge bouquet. Lisa gasped when she met him on the doorstep. Go and get it, she said with a look of indifference. The owls of the neighbor's door rattled. Look at her! The brothel divorced. Star's rotten neighbor. A mouse with a child does not hesitate to bring men into the house. God forgive her, some people will do anything for a bouquet. Kelly was right. David's wife was right. Now I'll record everything. I have cameras ready, and then I'll put it in the main city group. The country should know its heroines, who profit from children's allowances in their spare time, exporting and moonlighting themselves. Michael turned sharply toward him. Listen, Grandpa, have you heard anything about privacy? If that video shows up anywhere, you're looking at a subpoena. David Taft, despite his massive size, shrank into the wall of the entryway. You're threatening me! You insult me! I'm going to report you. I don't think so, Michael replied. I suggest you read up on the law. You'll learn a lot of interesting things. By the way, I am a husband, and I have the right to come here at any time. I don't need your permission. The ex-husband, I checked with Kelly Fleming, is divorced. Peeked out from behind the spouse's shoulder. Woman mouse, or maybe just a roommate. We don't have to report changes in marital status to you, Michael Lisa parried. The incident with the neighbors was upsetting. Why did you argue with them? They're really going to call the nightstand now. It's going to be a showdown again. We're trying to keep the lights on. These two are reporting our every move to the guardianship office. You don't care, though. You'll probably be happy if they can send the kid back to boarding school. I don't care, Michael replied abruptly. Alisa, huh? I've been thinking a lot, and I've come to the conclusion that I've made a terrible mistake. I'd dreamed of an heir for so long, and when we did have one, albeit born to another woman, I'd given up. I wish more than anything in the world I could make it right. Ethan, will you accept me as a father, or at least an uncle? Will you marry me? I don't think I have any other choice, Lisa said. Nightstand's visit should be expected any day now, and I have no other choice, said Ethan. Yay! Now I have a real daddy! The nightstand did not fail to show up. Behind the inspector loomed the ubiquitous Taft with a video recorder. Are you a representative of the guardianship? Michael, who met Kelly at the door, asked sternly. He took a special day off work. Then come in, and this too curious member of the public will have to stay in the entryway. By the way, he continued, turning to David, your previous creations, which you spread in social networks, are already interested in the prosecutor's office. The statement is written, wait for guests. I warned you the other day to keep your nose out of our lives. And what did you do? Instead of heeding my advice, you edited a bunch of new videos and posted them on a city group with a few 100,000 followers. Are you stalking my spouse? Did she do something to offend you? Or are you trying to slap her? It was a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer. Taft fidgeted with the video recorder behind his back and dropped Michael. If right now you have decided to delete the video from social networks, it is certainly commendable. It will mitigate the liability, although it won't get rid of it. You know the internet remembers everything. Taft was in for another unpleasant surprise. I've been looking at your file, Michael added. You, David, tell everyone that you lost a leg in Afghanistan, but your legs are still there. It's true that one of them was badly fused after you got a fracture in a drunken brawl. Don't mislead people. My advice and this beret, you have no right to wear. You weren't even in the army. The girl was shocked and pissed off at Michael. She seemed to be at a loss for words. However, the official quickly came to her senses. Who the hell are you? What right do you have to be in an apartment belonging to an orphan? I have the right to call the police, and I'll do it right now. Could it be that you're a criminal, kidnapping an orphan and selling him? You're committing lewd acts in front of the child. Ethan should be sent to a boarding school. First of all, I'm Lisa's husband. Secondly, the apartment belongs to Lisa and Ethan equally. Michael parried. Thirdly, I won't let you insult your spouse and scare the child anymore. You're going to allow yourself something extra? I've been notifying your superiors. I have the means to do so, rest assured. You don't have to scare me, I'm filthy. The bedside table rattled, pulling out a phone from a plump, shapeless bag. The police will come quickly. We'll get the kid checked into the orphanage right away. We get signals all the time. Tell me, please, dear Kelly, Michael began cordially. Are you interested in city regional news? Or do you devote your life to prying into other people's families and harming them? He showed, staggered to the nightstand, some kind of identification. Since last week, I have been in charge of family, motherhood, and childhood issues in our entire region. That is, I am your boss. I will do everything I can to make sure that people like you are not allowed anywhere near children. I advise you to call the head of your department immediately and clarify the information by talking to your boss. Kelly snickered. Suddenly, the papal subtlety has taken its toll. Why does one get everything, an attractive appearance, and husband's officials and family, and others only miserable? A room in a communal apartment. I'm a veteran teacher. I just do my job and try to make sure that everything is according to the law, and I never get any thanks, just curses. It's hard to expect gratitude from people who have wronged you, isn't it? Asked Michael, who was not in the least impressed by this fiery speech. He swung the front door open sharply, and David eavesdropped in the entryway. I barely had time to bounce out of the way. Let's record the dirt, citizen, Michael asked cheerfully. Life teaches you nothing, Taft, to people like you. You should be kicked out of all positions with a broom, shouted David, hiding in his apartment. I will reach Moscow. You will remember me when you go to jail. Normal people have no life because of such officials. Damn bribe takers! Michael slammed the door and turned to the nightstand again. Kelly, did you get all your questions answered? The visit is over. I'll notify your supervisor about the departmental review. You might want to rethink the way you do things. She's still sobbing. She's running out the door. Come on! Taft invited her. But the official didn't take his invitation. She paused for a moment and said, You know what, David? Fuck you. You old gossip. I'll sue you for insult, bitch. Taft got angry and once again slammed the door shut. Looking ahead, we'll tell you that the rate of the litigation between recent friends and now irreconcilable enemies dragged on for 4 years. Both of the pro went to court as if to work, and not once any judge was able to force the parties to reconcile. During this time, the nightstand finally retired, and homegrown paparazzi Taft on the grounds of the same unclean acquired major health problems. When his wife finally forced him, lost weight by 40 kilograms, and to go to the doctor, it turned out that it was too late to treat. You should move to the countryside for fresh air. Averting his eyes, advised the hopeless and patient. Young doctor. Would that help? Taft asked hopefully. I won't die. We all die someday, the doctor replied evasively. The quality of life in this countryside is in any case better than here among the cars. Will you bask in the sun in your own garden? That's a great thing for a pensioner to do. That's what ruined me on E. Taft was crying on social media. Some even felt sorry for him, as one does for the dying, but there was no hurry to help or raise money for treatment. Lisa accepted her ex-husband Ethan's offer, and they adopted. On the day it happened, the radiant couple walked out of the courthouse with their first-grade son. This is to be celebrated, dear housemates, thundered the big official, Michael. Ethan, take your pick. Where are we going? I will choose today. Lisa suddenly objected. I have a surprise for you. Is it what I think it is? Michael asked quickly, and the wife smiled. 7 months later, a gleaming black executive car drove up to the maternity hospital. "Daddy, we still haven't come up with names for Maltsev," worried Kevin. "We'll take our family home now, then we'll think of one," Michael replied. We couldn't tell the child that he and Lisa were afraid of jinxes, afraid of a repetition of the terrible thing that had happened 8 years ago. But it all turned out all right. Now they are a large family. Michael Lisa for many years could not dream of it. They spent the whole evening coming up with names. Ethan made the parents laugh with a suggestion to name the little sister in blue. For some reason, the idea did not resonate in the parents' hearts, although they are thus worse. "Ik had arbeid. Von bouw wie weed a voorkelp saaiitstuur." The babies ended up being named Nancy and Jack. "Better wise then," Kevin replied. "We've had enough Michael and Ethan and Lisa in our family. At least let those two be normal. At least we won't forget what their names are, because the names rhyme. The pleasant hassle of bringing twins into the family has begun." Ethan was helping Lisa, while Michael was at work, and in the evenings, the newly minted father of many children fully devoted himself to the children. But only to walk with the kids, Lisa was a little difficult. While we are chasing one, the other will run away. "Why don't we move to the country?" Michael once asked the family. "We could sell the apartments and buy a nice house right away. I could drive Kevin to school myself." They were enthusiastic about the idea. The search for a suitable home began. "Look how cute it is. I found it." Lisa met her husband from work one day. "Let's go down this weekend and see it." A 3-story mansion on the edge of the woods. It's right on the shore of the lake. It'd be perfect for the kids. But the price the seller quoted was 3 times what he could get for the apartments. "I guess I'll have to look at something simpler," Michael sighed, "or take out a mortgage." The main thing was that no one else would buy the house, Kevin worried. "If you want me to get a job, I'll take the neighbors' dogs out too, just so we can move here." The problem was resolved quickly. Suddenly, one day the doorbell rang. "Ethan, open up," asked Lena, who was preparing dinner for the kids. There was nothing to be afraid of. The nightstand had forgotten its way into their house forever. And the unpleasant neighbor David was absorbed in legal proceedings. "Hello, you must be Ethan?" Lisa heard a familiar voice. The plate fell out of her hands and shattered. When Kathy entered the kitchen, "Hello, sister," she said in a friendly manner. "War found you, thanks to money and the internet. What do you want? Did you sign all the papers? Please be quiet." Lisa was scared. "Calm down. It's not part of my plans. I still prefer to love other people's children from a distance," smiled Kathy. "I came to thank you for everything you've done for me and for never telling the boy the truth." "I won't tell either," Lisa replied. Kathy dragged a huge fork from the hallway. Like a country aunt, I made a joke. She brought some goodies. "I really missed you. Let's celebrate my short visit. Otherwise, I'll soon forget Russian altogether." The tension eased. Kathy pulled more and more things out of her homeless valise. "This is for you. Do you like brand name scarves?" "Here's a gift from Kenzo. It's for Michael, his favorite perfume." "Which one is it for? What kind of stuff?" "And this is for the moths." Lisa Bury in the audience. Mixed feelings. Where were you when your child was being sent to an orphanage? When you were sitting in a kiosk at night? Nancy thought and immediately pushed the lonely thought away. And Michael had betrayed her once, too, and she forgave him. In the evening, when the head of the family came home from work, the table was set. And before that, Kathy, despite her sister's objections, willingly helped her cook. She seemed to have learned to cook. She noted with satisfaction as she tasted the dishes. "We'll do the same for mine tomorrow, okay? I'm not likely to do such feats at home. We have a cook, so you didn't come alone?" Lisa and her husband were surprised. "Wait till tonight, I'll tell you all about it." And so, The whole family gathered for dinner. A frank conversation took place when the children were fed and put to bed. I came here to tell you that I'm never coming back. Kathy began the story. I'm here. She looked at Lisa carefully. Nothing's keeping me here. Really, you guys are the only relatives, and I owe you a debt of gratitude, like I told Lisa this morning. Kathy's story was a long one. During the 3 years that she spent abroad, her life had undergone significant changes. We broke up with the bigwig Saryoga almost immediately because Rick had fallen for me. She recalled, old and lonely, very religious. I asked her to marry him, and she didn't refuse. I needed a foothold in England, and I was ready for anything. The young husband adored his Russian wife, bought her everything Kathy wanted. He paid for her education, first at school, then at the preparatory courses at the university, and did not ask questions about the past of the young wife. But it turned out that Rick was still collecting information about me, Kathy continued. One day he said we needed to have a serious talk. Kathy went. The case, she knew. Serious conversations, no matter who initiated them, always entailed problems. He must have found out something terrible. And from the point of view of a deeply religious, not young Englishman, there were more than enough terrible facts in her biography. On the way to her husband's study, Kathy pondered where she would live. Rick would probably take the jewelry away from her. I wondered if it would work. At least convince him not to cancel her visa. She may well get a job as a waitress or at least a cleaner. Some places provide housing for their employees. She should be so lucky. Maybe her husband will leave her the car. Then it will be possible to rent a cheap room in the suburbs and every morning to go to work in the capital. The husband, contrary to Kathy's misgivings, did not look dissatisfied or aggressive. Rather, he was saddened. Baby, I'm sorry, Rick began. I made some inquiries for you, and it allowed me to draw some conclusions. Some of the inquiries included information about the rape of a schoolgirl, the birth of an unwanted child, and the future fate of Kevin. I'm an old man. I can afford to show emotion, Rick continued. You know I cried when I heard what you had been through. I was going to suggest that you take your Bobby back here to England, but as far as I'm concerned, you can't have feelings for a child who was born as a result of rape. And I can't make you love that boy, but I can do something for him, because it's a part of you and for your sister, who has accomplished a real feat for your son. Rick, worried and begging his wife not to worry too much, told her everything, and what the detectives had told him about Lisa and her fight for Kevin and the family reunion. We should thank these people, Rich summarized. We're going to Russia tomorrow, but I have one condition: I could just transport your sister a large sum of money. I'm sure she wouldn't waste that money. Lisa is an amazingly kind person and a real fighter, a rare combination. But people have to take responsibility for their mistakes. I want you to right these wrongs yourself. I want you to meet with Lisa and talk to her. If you develop feelings for your son, at which I frankly doubt, my lawyers will settle the matter by traveling to Lisa's hometown. The couple settled into the best hotel in town. Rick wanted Kathy to visit the family without him. It's a quicker way to rebuild family ties. Family is sacred, he explained. If you want, I'll join you later the next day. When Ethan opened the door for me, I didn't recognize him, of course. I just guessed it was him, Lisa said. And you know what? I realized that I still wasn't feeling anything. Especially since just yesterday, I took a pregnancy test and found out that I'm expecting my baby's child with a really decent man. When I married a man almost 3 times my age, I was doing it for a quiet life of prosperity. Now I realize I really love him. Well, good for all of us. Tomorrow, Rick will wire Ethan a large sum of money. Whenever he wants to, he can come and visit us in the UK. I'm his aunt on paper, and I'm still his aunt. What remains to be decided is a gift for you. Refuse the generous offer, Michael did not. The very next day, the couple with their other children, acquired relatives, went to buy a dream house. Rick turned out to be a surprisingly nice man. Lisa realized that Kathy could not have made a better choice, and how happy he was when he found out he would soon be a father. I've never had children of my own. I can't believe it's finally happening. The Englishman was jubilant, rejuvenated before his eyes. He looked at Lisa and said, "Once a long time ago, I dreamed of naming my daughter after my mother. But now I've changed my mind. The eldest daughter, and I am sure it will be a girl, as beautiful as my dear Kathy." When I learned about the life of this remarkable woman, I was sure she was made of stone. Perhaps that is indeed true, but she has a huge heart. A week later, the girl returned to her homeland, to Foggy Albion, and Simpson was left to enjoy the wealth that had fallen on his head like a snowball. Here, it would seem, it was possible to put an end to it. Ethan pleased his parents with his success in school, and they had already started kindergarten. Kathy and Rick had a daughter, Wendy. Now the couple were thinking about having a son. Rick felt fine, but even if something happened to him, the young wife and daughter would be provided for the rest of their lives. But Lisa had not forgotten another prediction from the old gypsy woman Cindy about forgiveness for the Queen of Spades. She told her husband about a strange occurrence in the park. Michael took the prophecy surprisingly calmly. "It really took me a long time to decide to approach you, apologize, and try to repair the relationship," he said. "I was sure you were growing up and had been watching you from a distance. If you were a regular profiteer, it wouldn't have been a problem, because I've always made a decent living. That's what attracted me to your temporary successor. We broke up after I caught her with another man before her time. I came back from a business trip. That's when she told me everything. What a boring asshole I am. I don't know how to do anything. I'm just a purse on legs. But I was sure you wouldn't accept material help or gifts from me, not even for Kevin. You wouldn't want to take advantage of my position of authority either. And that day, when I brought you the bouquet, as if something made me buy all the roses in the flower store, I went without any hope of success. But you didn't turn me away. In fact, that day you protected me from angry neighbors and an equally aggressive official, Lisa reminded me. I forgave you a long time ago, but it was my pride that prevented me from making the first contact. It's so good that you took the first step. I can't imagine what we would have done without you. It's very easy to imagine. I would have gone to England, lived there in my sister's house. I would not give a damn, Michael joked. Speaking of predictions about the new king, I hope it's all clear to you. He is now forever at your beautiful feet. The King of Spades, Kabanov, is also clear. They say he doesn't have long left to smoke in the sky. I think you and I got our award too. That leaves only the Queen of Spades, our beloved Kelly, a well-deserved pensioner. But I got the impression that the evil hoverfly doesn't need your forgiveness too much. So the gypsy woman was wrong about something? The answer to this question Simpson received the next weekend, when they went for a walk around the city. Look, Michael, an old woman fell into a puddle, Lisa exclaimed. She's formidable. I'm afraid I won't be able to pick her up without your help. The couple told Rostek to play with the twins and rushed to help the old woman. Not without difficulty, lifted her off the ground and sat her on a bench. Did you make a big mistake? Should we call an ambulance? Lisa asked. No, Lisa. I'll sit for a while and then I'll go, answered the grandmother. And Lisa stared at her in amazement. Kelly, what happened to you? The old woman cried bitterly. I'm homeless now, she wailed. I thought my luck would last forever. I won. Didn't take all these trials to the grave long ago. and I thought for joy that now fortune turned to me. The old fool turned out to be self-confident. A pensioner fell for a scam. And just what I needed, she lamented. The pension wasn't bad. The roof over my head was nothing. A room in a communal house. No, I wanted it to make 1,000,000. To prove to everyone that I'm not just an old lady. To be honest, I was jealous of your family. So God punished me. Some people get everything, others nothing. Michael recalled the words the envious nightstand said once in the kitchen of the apartment. One day, Kelly received a phone call from a nice young man. My name is Robert, and I want to offer you to invest in investments. Playing the stock market is a lucrative business. You know what the return on the stock of the largest airline in our country? I myself invested about 101,000 in shares just 3 months ago, and yesterday I moved into a new apartment. For a reasonable fee, I am ready to share information and provide training. To begin with, the cautious ex-official transferred only 10,000 to the designated account. The next day, she received a phone call from an excited Robert. Kelly, this is unbelievable. You made 30,000 in one day. Open the app. The naive pensioner followed this advice and made sure that the interlocutor was telling the truth. According to the website, the account really had not 10,000, but 40,000. Try to withdraw the money, Robert suggested. The cell phone rattled briefly. The bank's message came through. Almost a third of the amount had been withdrawn. Can I use whatever is left in my account in the app to buy the stock again? The woman asked the curator, elated by the success. You can, of course, but I have a much more favorable offer for you. True, you will have to wait a couple of weeks. But the winnings will be much bigger, assured Robert. Enough for a trip to the Maldives and a decent car. Do you have an entitlement? No, but I can get it, said Nightstand. Good call. By the way, there's enough money for tuition at the driving school, too. According to Ilya, I should have just invested more money to make super profits. But I only have 100,000 in my account, the pensioner admitted. No problem. You can take out a loan against the mortgage, the curator advised. The money will come so quickly that you won't even have to pay huge interest to the bank. The bank gave her $500,000 on the security of the room. The gullible teacher invested all this money in investments. But when she tried to withdraw it to her card a couple of weeks later, as she did the first time, the site froze. Did you do something wrong? Robert said worriedly. To unlock it, you need to send the site an amount within 100,000. The gullible one withdrew the rest of her savings from the bank and transferred them to the site. The portal froze again, and the phone screen showed the inscription, temporarily unavailable. The victim waited almost a month for the money, and then she read a newspaper article about a new type of deception and immediately realized everything. Kelly went to the police, but they never found the scammers. Or maybe they just weren't looking for them. 2 months later, the pensioner started receiving calls from the bank. First, that they demanded a minimum payment, then that they warned that they would take away the house. After another 3 months, a court took place, which ruled in favor of the credit institution. And then the bailiff showed up. The debtor was told to move out of her room. So now I'll just leave her on the streets. It's good that it's summer, Kelly sighed. I tried to ask my former colleagues for a place to sleep, but they all refused. I don't know what to do now. What Maldives? I just need to find a warm entryway for the winter. Why am I telling you all this? I've caused your family so much misery. Then she cried bitterly again. I pity her, Lisa whispered in her husband's ear. Let's let her stay in one of our apartments. She won't last long anyway. I've already convinced myself once that it's dangerous to argue with you, Michael pointed out. I can't forbid anything. Of course, she's a scoundrel. But you can't leave her on the street, and you can't send her to an old people's home. She'll drive everyone crazy with her nagging. Soon, Kelly did move into the apartment where she had so scandalously taken a former student's child. If you believe that the nightstand had reformed in vain, she remained just as cohesive and with a nasty temper. And in just a week, she managed to pick a fight with the whole neighborhood. She threatened to prosecute the dog owners. Children playing in the yard were viciously berated. Even the kindest Nancy, having tried somehow to placate the nightstand with fresh pies, was sent away. Promised to send to the neighbor Rospotrebnadzor and complain to the tax office that she as if she was engaged in unauthorized trade. And I warned Sheppel Michael, you're always picking on the wretches. It is to us round the clock we'll have to apologize to the neighbors. Let's figure out where to put it. Perhaps that would have happened, but soon she fell gravely ill. Lisa went to check on her because the scandalous tenant wasn't answering her phone, and found her on the kitchen floor. A stroke, the doctor declared. There's no room for these patients. No one will keep her in the hospital for years. When she stabilizes, we'll discharge her. You'll have to take care of her on your own. She's got a healthy heart. Maybe she'll be like this for 15 years. I suggest you get disability. It's expensive to take care of such patients, but she's not even related to us. Michael resented. I can't help you, the doctor replied coldly. But the hospital will bring her here after the old woman is discharged from the hospital. Lisa's worries increased. She was literally torn between the little school children and the paralyzed patient. She couldn't do anything on her own. When the poor thing needed something, she screamed in a frenzy of pain. Good thing, Michael joked sadly. She couldn't swear. Claims, however, he did not. However, was afraid to offend his wife. 4 months later, she suddenly regained her speech. It came out like this. Lisa is the queen of Thailand. Lisa couldn't believe her ears. She went to the bed to fetch something. Are you thirsty? Or do you need a change of underwear? I'm sorry, the old woman mumbled indistinctly and stared at Lisa. How long have you been sorry? She said. Well, now that you're talking, will you get better? Let's have some tea. When Lisa came back from the kitchen with a glass of warm tea, the old woman was already dead. Lisa closed her eyes and called her husband. So, the old woman's last prediction has come true, Michael said thoughtfully. I wonder where to find this Cindy. I'd ask her something myself. A young sophomore student was running through the empty park, late for the bus. Not to miss the bus. The test is in an hour and a half. The teacher's strict. If Sam fails the test, he won't be allowed to take the exams. And that's the end of the dream of higher education. And at home, the sick mother, who dreamed so much that her son became a doctor, denied herself everything. Sam hired tutors, worked 3 jobs, Sal Mortensen, and now she had to do it. Don't be in such a hurry, there's no credit today. Is your John sick? Heard the student and tush her. Orsumden from surprise stopped on the curb and settled down. Patra, an old gypsy woman. In a scarf. In her hands, she held a deck of tattered cards. Your mom's gonna be fine, and you're gonna be a famous heart surgeon. And yes, the third-year girl likes you too, but she wants you to make the first move. Girls, not like that, smiled the strange fortune teller. Better buy Grandma Cindy a spoonful of pumpkin soup orange, like the fall sun. Flavorful, hot. And I'll tell you the whole truth in return. Am I confused?